Unlock. Unlock successfully. Title: Super High School Level Wrestler. Explanation. New Warrior never will take off his mask. Characteristic. Mask blessing. Mask blessing. In the state of wearing a mask, the physical fitness is doubled. The moment he unlocked the Super High School Level Wrestler, Lu Chuang could feel obvious changes in his body. The most intuitive feeling is that the muscles of his whole body have become tighter, and the weight of the shovel in his hand has become extremely light. Obviously, his strength has been greatly improved. Amplitude boost. Lu Chuang swung his fist forward, and there was a roar of tearing, making no one doubt the astonishing power contained in it. This power. Lu Chuang's eyes lit up. Although his physical fitness has been relatively improved when he unlocked other super high school level talents, those talents are far from being improved as significantly as wrestlers. Lu Chuang is confident that even if he doesn't turn on the bullet time, with his current strength, he can fight Captain America 50-50. Bruce Banner looked at the location where the abomination was, hesitatingly asked, "Is he dead?" The memories of Bruce Banner and Hulk are not connected to each other, so he doesn't know what happened when Hulk was online. But judging from the abomination's soul that is enough to hold the file size of his head, the battle scene at that time should be quite spicy for the eyes. Not being able to remember is not necessarily a bad thing. Dead. Our plan was successful. Lu Chuang nodded, the achievements and tasks were completed, and the hatred was naturally dead. Lu Chuang gave a thumbs up. Banner, congratulations, you have learned a god-level move. Once you use this move, whoever will fight for the front, I recommend you to use this move to deal with the enemy next time. There won't be a next time. Bruce Banner shook his head decisively. It just sucks to get your arm in there. If it weren't for solving the powerful enemy of hatred, he wouldn't do such a thing if he was killed. Lu Chuang persuaded. Heroes are unyielding. Maybe you will encounter difficult enemies in the future, and you will be able to use this trick at that time. Bruce Banner disagrees with this. This method depends on the size. Except for the special case of Hulk and the Abomination, how can there be such a tall titan on the Earth? I have a question. Please tell me, how on earth did you transform me back from Hulk? Bruce Banner asked suddenly. He finally realized the problem through multiple transformations, and looked at Lu Chuang with fiery eyes. What is he injecting the antidote for? Just to get rid of Hulk and prevent Hulk from affecting his normal life. No one knows how bleak Bruce Banner has been these years. Every time he is stimulated, Hulk will wreak havoc. For this reason, Bruce Banner practiced yoga hard. Learn to control your emotions. Especially in the recent period, Bruce Banner finally found his girlfriend. Originally, he wanted to write a large article of a few thousand words, but in the end, he didn't get 100 words. Bruce Banner was too excited and wanted to calm down forcibly. After all, Bruce Banner doesn't want the main character to suddenly change after the trailer is over, and his head will be greener than Hulk's by then. However, his successful transformation shows that his antidote has no effect at all. Originally, Bruce Banner has completely given up and is going to fight with Hulk to the death. At worst, they will be single for a lifetime together. However, the appearance of Lu Chuang gave Bruce Banner hope again. If he figured out how Lu Chuang transformed himself back, then his 1,000-word essay would be back. Lu Chuang's scalp tingled a little from Bruce Banner's fiery gaze. Could it be that this guy inserted his abhorrence, and then suddenly awakened some kind of special hobby? To be honest, Lu Chuang doesn't know why purification can switch Bruce Banner to Hulk. Lu Chuang thought for a while, whether it was Bruce Banner or Hulk, what he saw was the soul of Bruce Banner, and his mana could affect the soul level, so every purification would act on Bruce Banner to remove his all negative states. That is, the Hulk was removed as a negative status of Bruce Banner? Lu Chuang thought it was very possible, but of course he couldn't tell Bruce Banner about this. He said solemnly, "This is my family's unique knowledge, it can cure most diseases, and it is also very helpful for patients like you." Hearing Lu Chuang's words, Bruce Banner instantly felt that he was saved, and said pleasantly, "Doctor, tell me, what kind of patient am I?" "Mentally ill." Lu Chuang explained, "Listen, you and Hulk actually belong to two different personalities. Simply put, they are multiple personalities, so your memories are not interoperable, but you are essentially one person." Bruce Banner was taken aback for a moment. He was surprised by Lu Chuang's words. In Bruce Banner's view, Hulk is a monster born out of a scientific accident, but this monster hides in his body and occupies his body, so Bruce Banner thinks that he is completely different from Hulk. Not at all, you'll feel like you're the same person as the Hulk. It's impossible. Bruce Banner subconsciously denied. Nothing is impossible. Hulk also has wisdom. Maybe you can try to communicate. Lu Chuang is not talking nonsense. From the perspective of Marvel, Hulk is indeed a split personality of Bruce Banner, which explains why is Bruce Banner's soul still in Hulk's body. Bruce Banner had weird eyes. How could he feel that Lu Chuang knew Hulk better than him? But Bruce Banner doesn't want to discuss this right now and asks, so what's your cure? Lu Chuang shook his head. This is a mental illness, and my family's unique knowledge can't cure it, but I have a secret medicine that can help you suppress Hulk. Bruce Banner realized that this might be Lu Chuang's means to transform himself back, and excitedly said, can you give me a try of this secret medicine? Definitely. Lu Chuang spread his palms towards Bruce Banner. Bruce Banner wondered, what's wrong? Give me the money, the secret medicine doesn't cost money, Lu Chuang said definitely. Bruce Banner scratched his head in embarrassment. After all, he was not familiar with Lu Chuang, and it was a bit too much to take the other party's things for nothing, and the fee was very reasonable. Then how much do you want? Market price, 10 million USD. 200,000 USD. Bruce Banner's eyes widened. This is too much, I don't have that much money. Lu Chuang pouted. These mutated superheroes are really poorer than each other. Technological heroes like Tony Stark are rare. Looking at Bruce Banner's whole body with only a pair of big underpants left, Lu Chuang said with disgust. Okay, for the sake of helping me, I'll give you a bottle, but I didn't bring it with me. Go to Tien, I'll give it to you later. Hearing Lu Chuang's words, Bruce Banner turned sadness into joy. Really, thank you so much. Tat tat tat. Lu Chuang and Bruce Banner were about to leave when they heard the sound of propellers in the sky. Immediately afterwards, several glaring rays of light penetrated through the holes in the wall and shone into the dilapidated building. Since Lu Chuang and Bruce Banner hid in the corner, the searchlights did not find them, but the corpse of the abomination was completely exposed under the light. Lu Chuang's ears moved slightly, and he could hear a sound of neat footsteps coming from a distance, getting closer to their position. Ross's support force is here, and his army has surrounded here, ready to take us down, Lu Chuang said. Bruce Banner frowned slightly. He believed Lu Chuang's words. No one knew General Ross better than him. Based on Bruce Banner's understanding of General Ross, this cold-blooded old man would definitely turn his back on him. Wait, you mean us? Bruce Banner asked suspiciously, aren't you one of Ross's soldiers? Because of Lu Chuang's camouflage, Bruce Banner always thought that Lu Chuang was a soldier of General Ross. Yes, but Ross and I had a little conflict just now. Lu Chuang looked worried. What contradiction? Lu Chuang waved his hand. It's nothing, it's just that I wanted his leadership, but he didn't want to, so I beat him and his soldiers. You said I'll go back and apologize to him now, will he forgive me? Bruce Banner. I think he'll lock you up forever. New York, Broadway. The Army's support troops have arrived at the scene, quickly blocked the entire street, and deployed armed forces on the street. Following Ross's order, a large number of well-equipped soldiers rushed directly into the ruins of the building and headed for the target location. After a while, they came to a dead end in the ruins of the building. In the ruins piled up with rubble, there was a huge corpse of a monster lying horizontally. The smell of burnt flesh and blood rushed to his face, and his body was covered with shocking scars, especially a certain part was riddled with holes. Horrible. Even the soldiers with strong psychological qualities couldn't help shaking their bodies, secretly sighing that they had a good time. After confirming that the abomination was completely dead, 233, the soldiers breathed a sigh of relief and dispersed to search for the ruins. Soon, the soldiers made new discoveries and immediately reported to General Ross. Not long after, General Ross stepped into the ruins. He glanced at the dead abomination, and his face became extremely uncomfortable. Then, led by the soldiers, he came to the corner of the ruins. General Ross looked down and saw a hole in the ground just enough to accommodate an adult file size, leading to the depths of the ground. Sir, judging from the traces, this tunnel was formed not long ago, and the target should have dug the tunnel and escaped. Hearing the soldiers' words, General Ross's face paled. How much time has passed, and they were able to dig out a tunnel to escape? This must be the mole becoming a spirit. Search the surrounding area, they must be found. At the same time, Lu Chuang and Bruce Banner crawled out of the ground, ignoring the bewildered expressions of passers-by, and ran directly into an alley covered in dust. After successfully getting rid of the army's pursuit, Brusner let out a long sigh of relief. Although with the existence of Hulk, he doesn't need to worry about the army being able to capture him at all, but Bruce Banner doesn't want to see more people die because of Hulk. Today is already messy enough. Lu Chuang threw away the broken shovel in his hand. A shovel of this quality was too difficult to dig, and it broke halfway through the dig. Fortunately, he had just obtained the talent of a super high school wrestler, and his strength was greatly improved. This broken shovel was dug out abruptly. If you have a chance in the future, just change to a better quality shovel. Lu Chuang thought so in his heart. He felt that the trick of digging holes was very useful, and it might be useful when escaping in the future. At this time, Lu Chuang walked to a corner as if searching for something, and then threw a bottle of something to Bruce Banner. Take it. Bruce Banner took it subconsciously, and found that it was a bottle of function drink, which looked like it was still drunk. What's this? The secret medicine you want, Lu Chuang said. Bruce Banner was stunned. How this secret medicine was completely different from what he had imagined. Lu Chuang explained. This packaging is used for camouflage. For such a rare secret medicine, it is definitely better to look as ordinary as possible, so that it is not afraid of being stolen. In fact, Lu Chuang snatched it from a passerby just now, and he had poured enough mana into it, saying it was a secret medicine, but it was actually the panacea he sold to Tony Stark and S.H.I.E.L.D. The universal potion with purifying effect can naturally suppress the Hulk in Banner's body. You're right. Bruce Banner nodded, putting away the bottle of secret medicine full of joy. As he said that, Lu Chuang took out a card from his pocket and handed it to Bruce Banner, and said with a smile, "This is my card. If you want the secret medicine, you can contact me, but next time you have to pay." Lu Chuang knew that Bruce Banner could not afford the money, but this did not prevent Lu Chuang from developing Bruce Banner into a potential long-term customer. Now Lu Chuang is not short of money at all. What he values more is Bruce Banner's ability. To be precise, it is Hulk's power to crush everything. In the future, if he encounters a difficult enemy like Abomination, he can seek the help of Bruce Banner, let Hulk hammer the enemy back and forth first, and when the hammer is almost the same, he will force Hulk to go offline, and finally make up again. Bruce Banner didn't know Lu Chuang's evil idea. He took the card, and was worrying about how to raise the money. If this secret medicine is really useful, whether it is bought for research or use, he will definitely continue to buy it from Lu Chuang. By the way, what should I call you? Bruce Banner asked. Lu Chuang thought for a while. You can call me Lu. Bruce Banner said embarrassingly. Lu, I want to trouble you with one thing. Can you help me buy clothes and pants? It's inconvenient for me to leave now. I'll return the money to you later. Hearing this, Lu Chuang took a sized look at Bruce Banner. Only a pair of big purple underpants left on his whole body. It was a bit outrageous to walk out like this. Say it earlier, come with me. Under the suspicious eyes of Bruce Banner, Lu Chuang did not leave the alley to look for the clothing store, but continued to walk deep into the alley. Lu, is there a clothing store here? Bruce Banner asked curiously. You don't understand this. Places like alleys can often spawn a kind of mobs. They have everything. If you lack money, clothes, or equipment, you can find them. The explosion rate is extremely high. Lu Chuang walked into the depths of the alley, and as expected, he soon saw a few punks dressed in sleek clothes. Seeing the appearance of Lu Chuang and Bruce Banner, the little hooligans smiled maliciously, but just after taking 2 steps, they suddenly raised their hands in horror. Holding a gun, Lu Chuang said to Bruce Banner, choose whatever you like. By the way, what are your requirements for underwear? Bruce Banner. New York, Broadway. Black Widow Natasha Romanoff looked at the man escorted into the car by S.H.I.E.L.D. agent, then took out his mobile phone and dialed an encrypted call. Sir, we have successfully captured Mr. Lan, Bruce Banner's contact person, whose real identity is Samuel Stern, a professor of cell biology at Gray State University, and we found a large number of them in his laboratory blood sample from Bruce Banner. While speaking, Natasha Romanoff looked at Samuel Stern's green head. However, he looks a little strange now. It seems that the wound was infected with Bruce Banner's blood. I don't know what the effect is at the moment. Destroy all the blood samples, don't leave any samples for Ross, remember to do it beautifully, and bring Samuel Stern back for interrogation. Nick Fury's voice came from the other end of the phone. Clear. As an old agent, Natasha Romanoff naturally understands what Nick Fury means. The existence of S.H.I.E.L.D. cannot be exposed in this matter, so Nick Fury will send her, a super agent, to take charge of this secret operation. Nick Fury asks, how's it going with Bruce Banner? Someone pretended to be a soldier of General Ross and escaped with Bruce Banner. Is it him? According to my analysis, that soldier is likely to be Black Mask. In the director's office, Nick Fury looked thoughtful after hearing Natasha Romanoff's confirmation. Black Mask is the codename S.H.I.E.L.D. privately calls Lu Chuang. When Phil Coulson met Lu Chuang for the first time, he was wearing a black mask, so they codenamed Lu Chuang as Black Mask, and some people suggested calling him Tony Stark, because Lu Chuang posted a Tony Stark's avatar, but Nick Fury directly rejected it due to copyright issues. For this elusive guy, Nick Fury has always had a lot of doubts. According to the information currently held by S.H.I.E.L.D., Lu Chuang belongs to the extremely dangerous category of people. Whether it's Lu Chuang's fighting ability or the impeccable camouflage ability, they are far beyond the scope of ordinary people. Even S.H.I.E.L.D.'s top card Black Widow is not as good as the opponent. As for the other party's purpose and true identity, they have no clue at all. No way. Every time Lu Chuang came and went without a trace, they couldn't find any useful information at all. Nick Fury thought about it, and gave up the idea of AA pursuing it. Anyway, Lu Chuang has a deal with S.H.I.E.L.D., and he will ask Phil Coulson to investigate it carefully. At this time, Natasha Romanoff said, General Ross took the body of Emil Bronsky, do you need to stop it? Unnecessary. Nick Fury is a little gloating, he knows that General Ross must be feeling bad now. Because of his actions, 2 monsters appeared in the bustling area of AA Manhattan, directly destroying 2 entire blocks, and in the end Bruce Banner escaped from him. If this matter is not handled well, even if he no matter how high his position is, he has to come out and apologize to the people of the whole country. It is estimated that General Ross is right now, and there is no need for Nick Fury to touch General Ross's brow at this time for the sake of a corpse that is only worth researching. Nick Fury tapped his fingers on the table, and said in a deep voice, Agent Romanov, when you come back, make a detailed report and send it to me, and... After a few instructions, Nick Fury hung up the phone and began to draw up a budget appropriation agreement. The content is about this incident, emphasizing the power of Hulk and the Abomination, which leads to the need for S.H.I.E.L.D. to upgrade equipment to deal with similar incidents. Nick Fury can be said to be familiar with such things as writing budget appropriation agreements. He typed out tens of thousands of words in a long way, and finally pointed to a theme. S.H.I.E.L.D., lack of funds, send money. The next day, Lu Chuang was at home, standing blankly in front of the mirror. What are you looking at? Lorna was very surprised. She watched Lu Chuang standing there for almost 10 minutes. Is there any need to be so narcissistic? Lu Chuang asked with a serious expression, did you notice any difference in me today? Hearing this, Lorna looked at Lu Chuang. Did you change your clothes? Lu Chuang shook his head. No, you changed your hairstyle. Wrong. Did you cut your nails? Still wrong. Lu Chuang looked at Lorna with contempt. Didn't you notice that I grew a centimeter taller? Who could have noticed this? You're about the same age as me, and it's normal to grow taller. Lorna was speechless. Just because of such a trivial matter, how much leisure do you have to stand in front of the mirror for so long? Haven't you noticed the key point? Lu Chuang said a little excitedly. Now my height is 177, and if I grow by 1 centimeter, I will be 178, and I will reach 1.8 meters with 2 centimeters left. After breaking up with Bruce Banner yesterday, Lu Chuang went home, took a shower and lay on the bed. When awakening came, Lu Chuang actually found that he had grown taller. Although the current age of Lu Chuang is 18 years old, Lu Chuang knows very well that he has stayed at this height for a long time before crossing. After careful analysis, Lu Chuang finally came to the conclusion that it might be that the super high school level wrestler he just acquired had greatly improved his body, which by the way promoted his development. Upon discovering this, Lu Chuang regained hope immediately, as if he saw that he was about to cross the abyss of 1.7 meters and step into the unprecedented height of 1.8 meters. You know, this is the dream of most boys. Who wouldn't want to hold their head up and say that they are 1.8 meters when introducing themselves? Lorna couldn't empathize with this, and felt that Lu Chuang was exaggerating. At this time, little Peter just came over from school. He asked curiously, Big brother, what are you doing? Seeing the arrival of little Peter, Lu Chuang couldn't wait to ask, Little Peter, have you noticed any difference in me today? Little Peter looked at it for a while, and his eyes were horrified. You have grown a centimeter taller. That's right. I'm going to be 1.8 meters, congratulations. Where? Lorna. Lu Chuang was in a good mood when he found out that he had grown a second time. He clapped his hands and decided to go out and celebrate. Little Peter expressed dejectedly that he had to go home to have dinner with Aunt May and could not attend Lu Chuang's celebration dinner. In the end, only Lu Chuang and Lorna went out to celebrate. At night, Lu Chuang and Lorna walked out of the house. When passing Broadway, Lu Chuang saw many police cars parked on the street. Even after a day, people can still be heard discussing what happened last night on the side of the road. And with the passage of time, all kinds of gossip gradually spread in the street, like what kind of man finds himself beaten by the Green Queen in the street. Lu Chuang found that very few people discussed the issue of the army. It is estimated that the American government is operating behind the scenes, deliberately guiding the direction of the fishing boat, so that people's attention will be focused on Hulk and the Abomination, thereby reducing the military's role in this battle. Presence of the event. Lu Chuang is no stranger to the daily operations of the American government. Lu Chuang took Lorna to the corner of the Stockton neighborhood in Brooklyn. Is this the good place you said? Lorna looked at the bar in front of her, and her face suddenly turned black. At the entrance of the bar, there was a cartoon statue of a long-nosed green-skinned witch, and the word, witch bar, was printed on the door next to it. How could Lorna not know this bar? Isn't this the bar where she hunted vampires with Lu Chuang? It is because of them that this vampire bar has become a holy place for online celebrities to check in. Lu Chuang nodded. That's right, this is one of the most popular internet celebrity stores, and the ratings on the internet are quite high. Don't tell me, have you noticed that the statue looks a lot like you? Lorna gritted her teeth. This guy really can't open the pot. Go in and have a look. Lu Chuang walked into the bar with arrogant steps. Lorna touched her dyed long black hair, gritted her teeth and walked in. Walking into the bar, Lu Chuang found that the decoration style of the bar had obviously changed, with weird pumpkin lanterns and black bats hanging everywhere, just like Halloween. The bartenders are all hot girls. They uniformly put on the shape of witches, wearing a necromancer hat, wearing a gothic black skirt and black stockings, and their legs are so high. Although Lu Chuang didn't know who the person in charge of the bar was, the other party definitely had a thorough research on ISP. This can be seen from the men with straight eyes. Lu Chuang shook his head and sighed, it's really going downhill. Lorna saw Lu Chuang's eyes staring to the limit, and said contemptuously, don't look at it, if you look at it again, your eyes will fall into the ditch. Lu Chuang opened his eyes and said, how can you smear people's innocence out of thin air like this? I'm looking to see if they are vampires, and I can't fall into the ditch. They have traces of padding to some extent. I hate false propaganda. Lorna. He also said that he hadn't looked at it, but he looked at it so carefully. After Lu Chuang glanced around the bar, he looked away. There are no vampires at all. Damn it, are those vampires really planning to open an online celebrity shop? Lu Chuang thinks it's a little outrageous. Are all the vampires so closely following the trend? Lu Chuang was a little disappointed that he couldn't see the vampire. He and Lorna walked to the bar and waved to the bartender. The bar came over and handed Lu Chuang a wine list. Sir, this is a new wine in our bar, and there are some snacks, you can take a look. Lu Chuang glanced at the wine list: lizard blood wine, dragon's urine, grilled gecko skin. Lu Chuang and Lorna stared dumbfounded. Is it such a heavy taste? What are these things? Lu Chuang asked, pointing to the wine list. The bartender explained. These are the ingredients used by witches to make medicine. In fact, lizard blood wine is Bloody Mary, dragon's urine is beer, roasted gecko skin is. Okay, I see. Lu Chuang stopped the bartender from reading. Good guy, he really knows how to do business, even the name fits the theme of the witch. Bring me the biggest whiskey. Lu Chuang didn't bother to ask what the whiskey was made of, he was afraid he wouldn't be able to drink it after hearing it. Bring me a cocktail. Lorna did the same, not even looking at the wine list. Okay. After the bartender left, Lorna asked in a low voice. I heard that you asked Ivan to investigate the X-Men matter. How is the investigation going now? Lorna is still very interested in X-Men, in fact, she also wants to know if X-Men really exists. Lu Chuang did not choose to hide Lorna, and said nonchalantly, some clues have been investigated, for example, the leader of the X-Men has met Ivan. What? Lorna's face became complicated. So, the X-Men are real? Lu Chuang nodded. Yes, male. Then why don't they show up all the time? Isn't it saying that the district police is a mutant organization dedicated to the harmonious existence between humans and mutants? Lorna asked. X-Men disappeared for a reason, but the specific reason is still unclear. Even Ivan is not clear. I'm going to continue to investigate. Having said that, Lu Chuang paused. He thought for a few seconds, then suddenly asked, have you heard of Brotherhood? Brotherhood? What's that? Lorna looked puzzled, she had never heard of the name. Lu Chuang explained. Brotherhood is similar to X-Men, and it is also a mutant organization, but this organization's behavior style is more radical and extreme. They advocate the supremacy of mutants, and let mutants replace human beings as the masters of the earth. Simply put, it is a version of mutants. Terrorist organization. After listening to Lu Chuang's words, Lorna frowned slightly. She felt that the nature of Brotherhood was too extreme. Even though mutants are being unfairly treated in society today, Lorna has not chosen to be hostile to all human beings. She knows that no matter whether it is human beings or mutants, there are good people and bad people in them. Besides, her aunt is also an ordinary human being, so Lorna naturally wouldn't think so extreme. What Lorna hates are those humans who persecute mutant, as well as the disgusting Mutant Act. But I've never heard of this organization, Lorna said. It's normal that you haven't heard of. After all, X-Men and Brotherhood are both mutant organizations of the same era. How could a young mutant like you know about it? Lu Chuang said with the tone of someone who had experienced it, which made Lorna speechless. As if you've seen it with your own eyes. What Lorna didn't know was that Lu Chuang had indeed seen it with his own eyes, but only in a movie. But this does not affect Lu Chuang pretend. Seeing Lorna's hesitant expression, Lu Chuang laughed and said, as you may have guessed, X-Men and Brotherhood are two completely different natures. One is dedicated to the peaceful coexistence of mutants and humans, and the other is dedicated to overthrowing humans. Dominion, the two will inevitably conflict. The fact is the same. Every time Brotherhood jumps out to do something, the X-Men will come forward to stop it, making Brotherhood's conspiracy fail again and again. Every time. Lorna gets to the point, which means Brotherhood has messed up more than once. Doesn't the American government ignore them? Lorna can't believe it. In her opinion, it is impossible for the American government to endure two groups of mutants fighting on their territory all day long. Lu Chuang chuckled. They don't dare to care. Why? The reason is simple, because the leader of the X-Men is bald. The leader of X-Men is called Professor X. He possesses the telepathy ability, which allows him to read and modify other people's memories, the minds of all the people in the world. Lu Chuang pointed to his temple. At that time, he only needed one thought to kill most people on the earth. Hiss. Lorna gasps for contributing to global warming. This ability is too scary. Now Lorna finally knows why Lu Chuang said that the American government does not dare to control it, and also knows why Professor X was able to establish a mutant academy on the American site. Thinking of this, Lorna said, the leader of Brotherhood must also be very strong, right? Since the leaders of the X-Men are so strong, as the deadly enemy of the X-Men, the leader of Brotherhood must not be far behind. Lu Chuang nodded. That's right. Lorna couldn't help asking. What's the leader's name? Lu Chuang stared at Lorna, and said without any hesitation, his name is Magneto. Lorna frowned. For some reason, when she heard the name, something moved in her heart. Before she could think about the reason, she heard Lu Chuang say, Magneto and Professor X used to be good friends, but their ideas were different, so the two finally parted ways. Magneto, you can tell by the name, his ability it's controlling magnetic field. Any metal is a toy in front of him. Well, it's exactly the same as your ability. Same as my ability. Lorna was stunned and hadn't reacted yet. Lu Chuang asked, do you know who your biological father is? Lorna finally reacted, her eyes gradually became complicated. Having said all of this, Lorna couldn't understand what Lu Chuang meant. You mean, he's mine, he's related to me? Lorna changed her words in the middle of speaking. She couldn't say that word, it was too unfamiliar to her. Lorna knew that she was an orphan and was taken in by her adoptive parents when she was a baby, but before she could form any memory, her adoptive parents passed away one after another, and her aunt only knew that her adoptive parents picked her up somewhere. About nothing is known about other things, let alone news about her biological parents. Lu Chuang nodded. Yes, that's why Ivan invited you to join the Mutant Underground organization. I think you have the right to know about it. Lu Chuang had no intention of hiding Lorna, took this opportunity to tell Lorna about her real-life experience. Lorna was silent, it was so sudden that she couldn't accept it for a while. It's not that Lorna didn't think about finding her biological parents before, at least she wanted to know why they abandoned her, but Lorna didn't have any clues at all, and as time went by, she gradually forgot about it. However, Lorna did not expect that there would be clues about his biological father at this time, and he was still related to the leader of Brotherhood. Lu Chuang didn't bother Lorna, and waited patiently. When the bartender brought the wine, Lorna finally responded. She slowly raised her head. What's his name? Eric Lenscher, but I don't know if the name is real or not. The information Lu Chuang knows comes from the movie, so he is not sure whether the reality is different from the movie. Lu Chuang observed Lorna's expression. Unexpectedly, Lorna behaved abnormally calmly. It seems that her acceptance ability is quite strong. Where's Magneto now? Lorna swirled the cocktail and asked the question she wanted to know the most right now. Lu Chuang hesitated for a moment, he was wondering whether to tell Lorna the truth. But at the end of the story, Lu Chuang had no choice but to tell the truth. I heard from Ivan that Magneto disappeared long ago, just like X-Men, disbanded together with Brotherhood. Disappeared? Lorna muttered to herself, not knowing what she was thinking. Lu Chuang scratched his head in embarrassment. After all, he was the one who told Lorna that Magneto was his biological father, and now he told the other party that this biological father might be gone. Even Lu Chuang felt embarrassed because of his thick skin. So he comforted. Don't worry, it's just disappearing, it doesn't necessarily mean it's really gone. I know. Lorna looked calm, with a flash of green light on his fingertips. I was just thinking, if I have the chance to see him again, I must teach him a lesson. For this father who has never met, Lorna naturally does not have much affection, but it is inevitable that Lorna has a trace of resentment in her heart. No child can easily forgive the parents who abandoned them. With Lorna's character, it is impossible for her to look for the father who abandoned her like ordinary girls, and cry to him about how difficult it has been for her these years. Lorna has to solve it in her own way. That is to defeat Magneto, press his own father to the ground, and make him regret his decision to abandon him. Lu Chuang sighed inwardly, as expected of a family member. This temperament is really well controlled. Although you look very pretty when you say this, let me remind you that Magneto could lift a large submarine and an entire stadium when he was young, and he could lift the entire Golden Gate Bridge on people's faces when he was old. Damn, it might be a little difficult for you to teach him a lesson. Lu Chuang stretched out his thumb and index finger, making a gesture to draw a subtle gap. Yes, it's really powerful. Lorna's high-spirited look suddenly froze. Is my real father so strong? You know, now she is very reluctant to even lift a truck, let alone lift the tens of thousands of tons of giants like the Golden Gate Bridge. It is simply impossible. Lu Chuang patted his chest. It's okay, don't you still have me? Wait for me to help you find Magneto, then we will teach him to be a good man together. Lorna understood what Lu Chuang meant, and he would help him investigate the missing Magneto. I was a little moved in my heart. It is undeniable that no matter how much Lorna dislikes Magneto, she still wants to meet Magneto, her biological father, and ask him why he abandoned her in the first place. The corners of Lorna's mouth curled up slightly. That's it. Lu Chuang made a no-problem gesture. Then, the two began to discuss things about X-Men and Brotherhood. Leaving aside some undisclosed content, Lu Chuang told all the information he knew, even revealed the plot of the first battle, and explained in detail the first encounter between Professor X and Magneto, and the love and hatred behind it. As Magneto's daughter, Lorna listened to it with gusto, and strongly criticized Professor X's serious behavior of letting go of water. Although she has such a powerful ability, she has repeatedly let Magneto go. This is a flood. Father is kind and daughter is filial. After Lu Chuang's crazy spoiler, Lorna also has a new understanding of mutant. Now she knows that mutant can be so strong. There is a god who monitors thinking like Professor X, and he also has the tough power of a Steel King like Magneto. The two big mountains insisted on supporting the entire mutant group, and even the American government did not dare to act rashly. Putting it now, I simply dare not even think about it. Definitely, the main reason is that the current mutant is too weak, and it is difficult to find leaders like Professor X and Magneto. Think about John, the leader of the Mutant Underground Organization. He only has a relatively hard body and strong perception ability. It does not mean that John is not worthy of being a leader. The problem is that it is difficult for him to be as independent as the two predecessors. You must know that Professor X and Magneto can become the leaders of the two major mutant organizations, not only possessing strong personal charm and leadership ability, but more importantly, their strength. Otherwise, why should they lead a group of mutants who are also not weak? John can only lead the Mutant Underground Organization to hide in Tibet, for fear of being discovered by the Sentry Secret Service. As for Professor X and Magneto, one opened the Mutant Academy in America, and the other broadcast live in America to sabotage. Even Lorna, who has the same controlling magnetic field ability as Magneto, is far less powerful than Magneto. The current Lorna is like smashing a walnut with a nuclear bomb. She has a powerful ability but doesn't know how to use it. After listening to Lu Chuang's story, Lorna knew that the gap between herself and Magneto was indeed only 100 million points, but she also saw the upper limit of her ability. Lorna has decided that she will exercise her ability after returning home, and try to raise the Golden Gate Bridge and smash Magneto in the face. When Lu Chuang and Lorna were discussing how Professor X's hair fell out, Lu Chuang suddenly smelled a familiar smell. The taste of blue cheese mixed with canned herring again. Lu Chuang looked around thoughtfully, only to see a man with a rough face appearing at the door of the bar. This strange and unpleasant smell came from the other party. Only Lu Chuang could see that the man's soul was like a mass of rotten flesh, exuding a thick black mist. Vampire. Lu Chuang kept his eyes on the man as he walked into the depths of the bar without showing any signs of expression. I'm going to the bathroom, I'll be right back. Lu Chuang spoke to Lorna, picked up the vodka and followed. The man walked through the corridor and walked towards the restricted area of the bar. There was a sign at the door that prohibited entry and exit of unauthorized personnel. Lu Chuang glanced at the security personnel standing at the door, not wanting to startle the enemy, so he quickened his pace immediately, pretending to be drunk, and then bumped into the man inadvertently, spilling the vodka in his hand directly on the man. Before the man could get angry, Lu Chuang immediately made a standard bowing posture. SMI Masai. After finishing speaking, Lu Chuang swaggered away, leaving behind a man with a livid face. Lu Chuang didn't stay nearby, but went back to continue bragging with Lorna. At the same time, a sound came from the monitor in Lu Chuang's ear. Mr. Lind, you're here. Mr. Lind, what's the matter with you? A damned drunk, spilled wine on me. If Faith hadn't said that this bar can't continue to hunt, To avoid being noticed by the outside world, I must have sucked all of that guy's blood. There is still such a thing, Mr. Lind. Please tell that guy what he looks like, then I will send someone to arrest him and bring him to you after a while. I can't remember the Asian face, but I'm sure it was a neon person, only they like to bow. Just now, Lu Chuang secretly put a small monitor on the opponent. At the moment Lu Chuang could clearly hear the conversation on the man's side. Let's not talk about that. How did you do what Quinn asked you to do? Already prepared. Yes, Quinn said, if it's done well, you'll be one of our greats. Really, thank you so much. Listening to the ecstatic voice coming from the monitor, Lu Chuang took a sip of whiskey calmly. It's not hard to hear that this is a conversation between a vampire and a human. Knowing the identity of a vampire, a human dares to cooperate with a vampire who regards itself as food. I have to say that human beings are really a magical race. There are many people who deal with the devil. Although vampires have various flaws, vampires can live forever if they can't stand it. This alone is enough to make many people crazy. You know, why did Qin Shi Huang look for the longevity medicine? Isn't it because of longevity? Even the emperor can't resist the temptation of longevity, let alone these ordinary people. After talking about this, the two began to talk about the operation of the bar. The human seemed to be the person in charge of the bar. Bala Bala talked a lot and reported the recent turnover to the vampire. Not to mention, the turnover of this internet celebrity bar is really high. The specific reason seems to be because he and Lorna, because of the legend of witches circulating in the bar, attracted a large number of customers, so that the traffic in the bar continued to increase, and a certain wave of business talents among the vampires operated, and the turnover of the bar soared. Moreover, Lu Chuang also heard that the real reason why there are no vampires in the bar is because the legend of witches scared away the group of vampires. Lu Chuang looked at Lorna in front of him, wondering if he should tell her how great her reputation in Zhonghu was, to the point where vampires were frightened by it. Half an hour later, Lu Chuang heard that the conversation on the monitor had ended and the man was about to leave. Lu Chuang did not act in a hurry, and said to Lorna, if you want to defeat Magneto, there is actually another way. Any solution? Think about it. Why isn't Magneto afraid of Professor X's ability? Lorna's eyes brightened. I understand, as long as I take away the helmet that can block the telepathy, he will not be able to resist the ability of Professor X. Lu Chuang nodded with a smile. If other people want to take away Magneto's helmet, they must subdue Magneto first. But if it was Lorna, with her ability, she might be able to steal Magneto's helmet directly. Thinking of this, Lu Chuang couldn't help thinking. Professor X asked Ivan to invite Lorna. This bad old man must have had this idea, right? After 10 minutes, Lu Chuang and Lorna left the bar. Lu Chuang said he had something to do and gave Lorna the key to go home by herself. After Lorna left, Lu Chuang took out his mobile phone and called up a software. The map and the location of the monitor were displayed on the screen. Okay, time to work. Lu Chuang stopped a taxi casually and asked the driver to go to the location of the monitor. The position of the monitor is not very far from here. Lu Chuang handed a USD to the driver and got out of the taxi. According to the screen display, Lu Chuang walked into a deep alley, but stopped soon, and quickly hid in a dark corner. Then, a man and a woman passed by Lu Chuang, and he smelled blue cheese mixed with canned herring again. Lu Chuang narrowed his eyes slightly, and he could see that the woman's soul was also a mass of carrion, while the man was a normal soul. Obviously, this man is an ordinary human being. Lu Chuang sneaked behind him. The two didn't notice that there was a person behind them. They walked into the end of the alley and came to an iron gate. There was a burly man standing at the door. He glanced at the unsuspecting man, and said with a strange smile, "Is this your man?" The corner of the woman's mouth curled up. "Yes. I'm her boyfriend, and she said there's a private party here that anyone can attend," the man asked. The burly man smiled strangely. "Yes, stretch out your hand." The man stretched out his hand for some unknown reason, and saw that the burly man took out a seal and stamped a fluorescent pattern on the back of his hand, but he did not do the same to the woman. Afterwards, the burly man opened the iron door and let the two of them go in. Lu Chuang stood in the corner and overheard their conversation. He guessed that the man must have been fooled by a female vampire. There are two vampires outside, so what kind of serious party could there be inside? Lu Chuang looked at the location displayed on the phone, and sure enough, the vampire was inside. From this point of view, it is very likely that he has found the lair of vampires. Lu Chuang put away his mobile phone, and his whole body suddenly became blurred. In the blink of an eye, he changed into a white man in a black robe, walking straight towards the burly man. The burly man quickly noticed Lu Chuang's appearance and intercepted Lu Chuang. "What's the matter?" Smelling the stench emanating from the other party, Lu Chuang put on a gentle smile. Hello. I heard that there is a private party here, anyone can attend, right? Looking at Lu Chuang's attire, the burly man has weird eyes. Are all the priests these days so good at playing? As a vampire, the burly man doesn't have any feelings for this kind of clergy. After all, the real clergy are just a group of ordinary human beings. They don't have any special abilities. They don't exorcise demons by reciting the Bible like in movies. What's more, the Bible has no effect on their vampires. He could even drink so-called holy water while reading the Bible if he wanted to. The burly man didn't feel that Lu Chuang could bring him a threat, so he grinned and said, "That's right, does the priest want to participate?" Lu Chuang nodded and said seriously, "I want to tell the ladies about our God and Savior." The burly man let out a hush in his heart, secretly going to the church to take jujube pills. Hand out. The burly man took out his seal. Lu Chuang reached out his hand cooperatively, allowing the burly man to mark the back of his hand. Immediately afterwards, the burly man pushed open the iron gate to let Lu Chuang throw away. Lu Chuang walked in without any scruples. The light here was very dim, with only a few light sources. After passing through the long corridor, Lu Chuang pushed open the deepest door. The frenzied music suddenly exploded in the ears, the dazzling colored lights flickered wildly, and in the very center of the space, there were countless figures shaking their restless bodies, and many tourists stuck together indulgently, performing various performances. A lens that needs coating. Nima, is this a cesspit explosion? Lu Chuang desperately covered his nose, but he could still smell the strong stench. In Lu Chuang's eyes, dozens of balls of rotten flesh were squirming crazily in front of him, and the scene was extremely spectacular. Lu Chuang felt that he would have to pass a sanity check any longer, so he quickly blocked his soul perception. Good guy. It turns out that group of vampires have come here to have fun. Just glanced at it, at least 80% of them are vampires, and the rest are humans. Those humans didn't realize the danger at all, and didn't even notice that there was something wrong with the eyes around them, like wolves staring at the lambs that jumped in, swallowing their saliva, and even some female vampires took the initiative to stick to them, licking and licking them neck. This group of men is proud of their own charm, but they don't know that the eyes of the female vampire are so red that they are about to burst out. Damn, the more you lick, the more delicious it tastes, I really want to drink up their blood. Lu Chuang, who just walked in, quickly attracted the attention of some vampires around him. Seeing the fluorescent light on the back of Lu Chuang's hand, the eyes of the vampires instantly became greedy, and soon a blonde beauty came over and tapped Lu Chuang's chest. "Oh, are you a priest?" "Yes, ma'am. Are you interested in learning about our God and Savior?" "God. What's there to talk about? Why don't we talk about some sensitive topics?" The blonde beauty licked her tongue, her expression full of provocation, as if hinting at Lu Chuang. "Okay, so what do you think of America's new president?" Blonde beauty. "Shit president, who wants to talk about such a sensitive topic?" The blonde beauty came over and whispered in Lu Chuang's ear. "It's too noisy here, let's go to a quieter place and chat slowly." Lu Chuang thinks what she said makes sense, but after a few steps, they were stopped by a woman with red hair. She raised an eyebrow at Lu Chuang and said seductively, "How about adding me? To tell you the truth, I am very interested in politics." The red-haired woman was not tall, so Lu Chuang lowered his head and saw an abyss. Lu Chuang was in awe. Definitely, the more people there are, the better. When a man next to him heard his words, his eyes lit up. "Then add me too, my dream is to be president." Lu Chuang glanced at the other party. "Sorry, I hate the president." Man, at this time, another woman with emerald green hair came. "Can I join in? My dream is to be president." Lu Chuang blinked and took a step back, only to see the complete sphere. Lu Chuang gasped and nodded vigorously. "Definitely, I like beautiful female presidents." The man looked dazed, and just watched Lu Chuang go to the bathroom surrounded by red, gold and green women. Pushing open the bathroom door, Lu Chuang was roughly pushed against the wall by the 3 red, gold and green women. "Father, do you want us to go up one by one, or together?" The red-haired woman stuck out her scarlet tongue, and her whole body directly stuck to Lu Chuang's body. The 2 women next to her also entangled with each other, their eyes full of excitement. The human beings outside are not enough for all the vampires to allocate. It would be great if the 3 of them could enjoy one human being. "I can do it." Feeling the amazing elasticity from his chest, Lu Chuang wondered if he should give up resisting. "Then let's go together." The 3 vampires in front of them couldn't bear it any longer, their blood pupils gleamed fiercely, their mouths opened to reveal sharp fangs, and they roared and rushed towards Lu Chuang. Their originally beautiful faces instantly became hideous. Lu Chuang suddenly became dull. The moment they were about to touch him, Lu Chuang suddenly raised his leg and kicked the red-haired vampire in front of him. The red-haired vampire felt an irresistible force spread throughout his body, and then flew back at an even faster speed. The whole person hit the wall. While the two vampires were stunned, Lu Chuang stretched out his arms and clasped their faces with his palms. Immediately afterwards, a strong hand placed them face to face. Boom. The floor tiles shattered, and the heads of the two vampires were directly pressed into the ground by Lu Chuang. There is no need to turn on bullet time, and now Lu Chuang has the talent of a super high school wrestler, and his strength has long surpassed the scope of human beings. With the corresponding close fighting ability, even vampires cannot fight against it. After suffering such a heavy blow, the two vampires did not lose their resistance. The wounds on their heads were recovering rapidly. Normal attacks could not kill a vampire. Lu Chuang was not surprised by this. Ignoring the weak resistance of the vampires, Lu Chuang controlled mana to flow towards the two vampires along the palm of his hand. Ah! Like gasoline meeting flames, the moment the two vampires came into contact with mana, their bodies suddenly ignited, screaming heart-piercingly, and finally turned into ashes, leaving no clothes behind. The mana has increased. Sensing the change in mana in his body, Lu Chuang turned his head to look at the only remaining red-haired vampire, and his smile gradually became kinder. Seeing the tragic deaths of her companions, the red-haired beauty said in horror, "No, don't come here." Lu Chuang walked up to the red-haired beauty, patted her on the shoulder, and said with a smile, "Don't be nervous. I just want to ask you what kind of party is going on here. Why are there only so many humans?" Looking at Lu Chuang's hand on her shoulder, the red-haired beauty swallowed her saliva. "Blood party. Here is held every once in a while, and the humans who attend the party are just desserts." "Oh, you mean there's still dinner?" Under Lu Chuang's threat, the red-haired beauty nodded in fear. "After the party officially starts, the organizer will pour fresh blood into everyone through the sprinkler, and then all vampires will be able to taste it." "So that's the case, the original owner blesses you." In order to thank the red-haired beauty for her answer, Lu Chuang gave the red-haired beauty a purification worth 200,000 United States dollars. "God fuck." The red-haired beauty screamed unwillingly, and then turned into ashes, adding a little mana to Lu Chuang again. Lu Chuang shook his head. "It's still too little. The mana that can be increased by killing a vampire is limited. If you want to greatly expand the mana, you must need more vampires." So, Lu Chuang set his sights on the vampires outside. There are at least 80 vampires in this bar. This time Lu Chuang does not intend to let them go. He is going to kill them all at once, so as not to scare them all away like last time. Can't find it. However, it is difficult to keep so many vampires. Although Lu Chuang is not afraid of these vampires, if he directly strikes, some vampires may escape. If these vampires are determined to escape, it is impossible for Lu Chuang to keep them completely. It didn't fit into his plan to wipe it all out. Unless, there is a way to get rid of all the vampires in an instant. Lu Chuang thought of what the red-haired beauty said, and a simple plan came to mind. The deafening music filled the bar, no one heard the movement of the restroom, and no one cared about a figure walking out of the restroom. On the dance floor, the vampires looked up at the sprinkler on their heads, with anticipation in their eyes. For them, the real party hasn't started yet. 10 minutes later, the music in the bar suddenly stopped, and the DJ said with a microphone, "Gentlemen and ladies, welcome to tonight's bloody party." Hearing this, the vampires all showed cruel smiles, and only a small number of humans cheered enthusiastically. In the darkness, DJ's eyes flashed red. "Today is a wonderful and short night, and I won't waste everyone's time. Before tasting delicious desserts, let's taste the main meal. Everyone, let's go crazy." As the music sounded again, the sprinkler started to activate, and countless drops of water fell on everyone. Everyone got excited, kept beating with the intense rhythm, and let the water droplets wet themselves. But soon, some people found something was wrong. "Wait, is this blood?" Mixed among the vampires, human beings noticed that the liquid in their hands was not water drops, it was clearly scarlet blood. They raised their heads in bewilderment, only to find that everyone around them was staring at them, strange and oozing. People. At this moment, the vampires couldn't bear it anymore, and immediately tore off the disguise on the surface. Their fangs popped out one after another, and they drank blood wantonly. Seeing such a terrifying scene, these humans finally realized their situation, but it was too late for them to escape. The surrounding vampires surrounded them, watching them stabbing with teasing smiles. "It's finally time for dessert." A vampire covered in blood grinned grinningly, reaching out to grab the human in front of him. The power of vampires far exceeds that of normal humans, and ordinary humans are no match for them at all. This vampire easily grabbed an adult male and opened its mouth wide to bite the opponent's neck. Suddenly, his face changed suddenly, and he said in disbelief, "There is thunder in it." As soon as he finished speaking, under the gaze of everyone, his whole body suddenly ignited spontaneously, turning into a mass of ashes in the blink of an eye. The sudden change stunned all the vampires who lashed out at each other. Before they came back to their senses, they heard a few screams from around them. Those vampires who drank the blood into their stomachs began to turn into ashes and dissipate in place one by one. A shudder. Blood is really poisonous. Stop it, stop drinking. Seeing the miserable situation of the same kind, the vampires suddenly panicked. The original delicacy instantly turned into a deadly poison, and the vampires continued to drink it into their stomachs. The vampires all shut their mouths tightly, thinking that it would be safe, but they suddenly felt a sharp burning pain from their bodies, and the blood sprinkled on them was like sulfuric acid, and they squeaked when they touched their bodies. There was a sound, and the flesh and blood melted rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. Run. If you don't run, you will die. All the vampires went crazy, regardless of the humans who were sent to their mouths, screaming and running away in all directions, trying to stay away from this death zone. But the area covered by the blood was too large. Before they could take a few steps, the sprinkler poured blood all over their bodies. Their bodies gradually melted from flesh to bones, and finally they died in pain. No matter how the vampires struggle, they can't resist the erosion of these blood, and human beings live in peace. What was supposed to be a bloody party in a human slaughterhouse suddenly turned into a slaughterhouse for vampires. Until the sprinklers stopped working, the vampire was no longer seen in the bar. The crowded space suddenly became open, leaving only a dozen or so humans standing in place. Surviving the catastrophe, they looked at each other, only to remember that the bar is the lair of vampires, and they fled this place of right and wrong one by one. Then, a figure appeared on the dance floor. It was Lu Chuang who had left the bathroom. Feeling the skyrocketing mana in his body, Lu Chuang grinned, his heart bursting with joy. After getting rid of those vampires, Lu Chuang disguised himself as one of the vampires and found the water reservoir of the bar, and found that there was blood in it, so he directly poured a lot of mana into it, and after his transformation, the blood became a pair of vampires, holy water with lethal damage. After killing dozens of vampires at once, the mana in Lu Chuang's body instantly increased by more than half. The door of the box at the moment bar was pushed open suddenly, and a dozen figures came out. Among them was Lin De, whom Lu Chuang had met in the internet celebrity bar. The headed rough man looked at the empty dance floor in astonishment. Where did everyone go? What happened here? At this time, D climbed out of the DJ booth tremblingly. Fortunately, his position was not covered by blood, so he escaped successfully. Quinn, there is something wrong with the blood. All the vampires I encountered died. What? Kun's eyes widened, and the picture in front of him forced him to believe this fact. Kun En felt something was wrong, suddenly looked at Lu Chuang standing in the middle of the dance floor, and asked, "Why didn't you die?" He recognized the identity of the vampire that Lu Chuang had disguised. All the vampires on the dance floor were dead, but Lu Chuang stood out on the dance floor unharmed. Didn't it mean that all the vampires who touched blood died? There are still vampires? Lu Chuang didn't expect this. He thought for a few seconds, I want to die later. Quinn. God damn it, die later. Looks like I'm late, is the party over? A deep voice came, interrupting their conversation. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice, but did not see any figure. Who is talking? Come out if you have the guts, Kong Kong shouted. I am right in front of you. With the sound of footsteps, a figure stepped out of the dark shadows and came under the light. Only then did they realize that the other party was a strong black man in a black windbreaker, black sunglasses, and a shotgun. Everyone cursed inwardly, who would be able to see wearing such black at night? But soon, a vampire recognized the other party's identity and shouted, he is Daywalker, Blade. Daywalker. The faces of the vampires changed drastically, as if they had seen a ghost. Lu Chuang is also familiar with this name. It seems to be the title of the Marvel character Blade Warrior. He remembered that the other party was a famous vampire hunter, half human and half vampire, not only possessed the powerful physique of vampires, but also eliminated the weaknesses of vampires. The sunlight that was fatal to other vampires had no effect on him, so he became the vampires are afraid of Daywalker. Damn Daywalker, you did it. Seeing the appearance of the Blade Fighters, Quen definitely thought that the Blade Fighters had tampered with the blood. The newly arrived Blade Soldier naturally didn't know what he was talking about, so he didn't ask. Instead he grinned and showed his white teeth. A new party is about to begin. Then, without any hesitation, he raised the muzzle of his gun and pulled the trigger at a vampire. Boom. This unlucky vampire was directly blasted into ashes. Obviously, the weapons of the Blade Fighters have been specially modified to have a very significant effect on vampires. Without giving the vampire time to react, the Blade Warrior raised his gun and killed another vampire. The vampires were all jealous, and so was Lu Chuang. Nima, this is a head grab. Kill him. Kun let out a roar, and the vampire around him screamed ferociously, and rushed towards the Blade Warrior. This group of vampires were obviously not ordinary vampires. They moved swiftly, quickly closing the distance with the blade fighters, not giving the blade fighters a chance to shoot. The long and narrow dark claws popped out from their fingertips, and went straight to kill the blade fighters. The blade soldier smiled disdainfully, threw down the shotgun decisively, and pulled out the silver long sword behind his back. Accompanied by a clear sword cry, the sharp blade slashed across the necks of the two vampires. Their heads were separated on the spot, and turned into a pile, ashes scattered in the air. As an excellent vampire hunter, Blade Fighter has received special training for a long time, and his own fighting skills have already reached the top level. In addition, half of the vampire blood flows in his body, and his physique is far beyond ordinary people. These vampires are not blade fighters at all. To the people. Facing the siege of the vampires, the blade fighters did not retreat but advanced, rushing to the vampires head-on. The figure of the blade fighter is like a ghost, looming in the dark environment, and he has used his advantages to the extreme. He is constantly waving the sword in his hand, and the powerful force almost completely cuts off the flesh and bones of these vampires. Melted plasma blooms in the air like a fountain. In just a few seconds, the blade fighters killed several vampires. Seeing that the number of vampires is gradually decreasing, Lu Chuang can't stand anymore. It is still useful for him to keep these vampires. There is definitely more than one place for vampires. There must be more vampires hiding somewhere. Lu Chuang's idea is to use the current disguised vampire identity to track down other sites of vampires, and even the base camp of vampires. He also counts on these insiders to help him lead the way. If all the blade fighters are killed, his plan will be ruined up. Without saying a word, Lu Chuang rushed towards the Blade Warrior together with the vampire. The blade fighters had noticed the existence of Lu Chuang a long time ago and thought it was an ordinary vampire, but they didn't think so, and swung their swords to get rid of the vampire. Unexpectedly, when the blade was about to touch Lu Chuang dodged sideways as expected, and punched the Blade Warrior in the face. The blade fighter was surprised by Lu Chuang's reaction, but his reaction was not slow either, raising his arm to block. This power. The moment he touched Lu Chuang's fist, Warrior Blade felt a huge amount of power coming, and his expression changed instantly. Fighter Blade endured the pain in his arm, and exerted force from his waist to forcefully resist the force. With a howling wind, the long sword pierced Lu Chuang's head. Lu Chuang dodged his head sideways, and dodged in front of the Blade Warrior. Using wrestler's skills, he grabbed Blade's wrist and twisted it suddenly. Blade immediately let go of his hand uncontrollably, and the silver long sword straightened. Landed. The Blade Warrior is also a werewolf. Regardless of the risk of breaking his wrist, he raised his elbow and slammed towards Lu Chuang's face, but Lu Chuang easily blocked it. You can't beat me. I advise you to run quickly. I will let you run 1,000 meters first. Lu Chuang earnestly persuaded Warrior Blade to leave. This guy staying here would only disturb his plan. He couldn't kill him because Warrior Blade grabbed the head. Immediately afterwards, Lu Chuang raised his foot and kicked the Blade Warrior away. Seeing that the Blade Warrior was defeated by Lu Chuang, an unknown vampire, Kunin shouted excitedly. It's a beautiful drive. Kill this bastard for me. Kill you while you are sick. After the Blade Warriors lost their weapons, the vampires swarmed up, and Lu Chuang also ran to the end for acting, which belongs to the kind of work without effort. Thanks to Lu Chuang's good control of his strength, the Blade Warrior quickly stood up again, leaning his back against the wall. Seeing that he was about to be surrounded with his bare hands, the blade fighter took out a grenade from his pocket and threw it at his feet without any panic, and the safety catch had been pulled out. Lu Chuang was stunned. Damn it, are you so rigid? However, the expected explosion did not come. I saw a thick yellow smoke emanating from the grenade, centering on the blade fighter, quickly enveloping everyone inside. Smell of garlic. Lu Chuang could smell an extremely pungent garlic smell, especially prominent in this almost enclosed space. He didn't expect that besides himself, someone else would add spices to the ammunition. Shit, it's garlic essence. Quinn, who was standing on the edge, stepped back quickly, for fear of being contaminated by the yellow smoke in front of him. When the garlic-flavored smoke touched the vampire, black smoke rose from the vampire's body, and he screamed heart-piercingly, just like the long sword made of sterling silver by a blade warrior. Grenade with garlic essence also has a very deadly effect on vampires. Lu Chuang looked at the vampires rapidly dissolving around him, can't help but fell into deep thought. How do you want him to act? When the smoke dissipated, only Warrior Blade and Lu Chuang stood intact. Seeing Lu Chuang in front of him, Blade Warrior's pupils shrank suddenly. How is that possible? He's half human, half vampire, so he's immune to spirits. But why is this vampire unaffected? Wait, you're not a vampire, or rather, you're like me. After the shock, the Blade fighters realized that there were only these two explanations for Lu Chuang not being affected by the garlic essence. Either he wasn't a vampire, or he was a half-human, half-vampire hybrid. What? Quinn looked at Lu Chuang in shock. Connie, we've done it so many times, why didn't I know about it? Lu Chuang. His disguised identity actually has this relationship? The next moment, Lu Chuang removed the camouflage and let him have an affair with a big man covered in hair. He would rather die. Seeing Lu Chuang's miraculous camouflage technique, both Blade Warrior and Kun En were stunned. Lu Chuang took out his pistol, pointed at the Blade soldier's forehead, and said viciously, "You are the one who broke my plan and robbed so many of my heads. Tell me, how will you compensate me? Can this be my fault?" The Blade fighters didn't know that Lu Chuang was in disguise, let alone what Lu Chuang's plan was, and expressed their innocence. Lu Chuang. I don't blame you, Blade Warrior, since this. Then who am I to blame? Blade Warrior. 7. Blade fighters felt a strong sense of crisis from Lu Chuang, knowing that the situation was not good for them. However, he was never one to sit still. While talking to attract a part of Lu Chuang's attention, the Blade Warrior's figure suddenly exploded, the half-vampire's blood was fully displayed, and the speed was brought to the extreme. Avoiding the lock of the muzzle, he rushed to Lu Chuang's body in a breath. In front of him, he punched Lu Chuang on the chin. Boom. Before he could clearly see Lu Chuang's movements, the Blade fighter's eyes suddenly went dark, and he was thrown flying again. This time Lu Chuang exerted a little force, and the Blade Warrior clung to the wall with a bang, and fell powerlessly to the ground. It seemed that he would not be able to get up for a while. Don't look at how easily Blade fighters kill vampires, it's all because he has special methods to restrain vampires, and the garlic bomb just now has shown that these methods are useless to Lu Chuang, so that many Blade fighters use them. If he didn't, he could only be forced to play hand-to-hand combat with Lu Chuang. It's just that now Lu Chuang's normal physique is stronger than that of a vampire, and his combat skills are also at the top level. Lu Chuang can easily torture Blade fighters without turning on the bullet time. Kun En, who was standing on the edge, saw that the situation was not good, and turned around to run away. Lu Chuang raised the muzzle of his gun and shot Kun En's left leg. Ah! The bullet carrying mana directly pierced through the left leg, and the mana kept burning around the wound, causing Kun to scream in pain. Lu Chuang came to Kun En unhurriedly, and said with a smile, "What are you running for? I just wanted to ask you something, is this your territory?" As early as when he was looking for the reservoir, Lu Chuang had already inspected this place. There was no monitor installed, and he didn't need to worry about being exposed. With cold sweat on his forehead, Kun En roared angrily, "So you are also a vampire hunter? Eat shit, bastard, don't try to learn anything from me." Lu Chuang was too lazy to talk nonsense, and shot another shot at Kun En's left leg. The soul is constantly eroding the rotten flesh. For vampires, Lu Chuang's mana is undoubtedly the most ferocious poison. Compared with the pain caused by bullets to the body, the pain of the soul is more unbearable. The self-protection mechanism of the brain does not include the soul. Therefore, Kun did not pass out and was forced to accept the torture from the soul. After only a moment of effort, Kun En couldn't stand it anymore, and begged for mercy. As a result, just as he opened his mouth, Lu Chuang suddenly shot him in the left leg again. Kun En hugged the bruised man, and his voice was very aggrieved. "I'm going to say it, why did you hit me?" Lu Chuang scratched his head in embarrassment. Instinctive reaction, "I thought you were going to be tough, just keep talking, I promise I won't shoot this time." The devil. Kun En didn't die from pain, but was almost killed by Lu Chuang on the spot. Fearing that Lu Chuang would rob again, Kun En endured the severe pain and replied very quickly, "This is not my territory, but Dickon Firth's territory, he is the boss of all of us." Lu Chuang vaguely remembered the name, as if he had heard it from a vampire. How many sites like this are there? 10. A dozen. Lu Chuang's eyes lit up. There must be many vampires in a territory with so many vampires. Lu Chuang said, "Tell me the specific location of all the sites." Under the threat of gunpoint, Kun En did not dare to hide anything, and revealed the location of all the sites. With the addition of various talents, Lu Chuang's memory has been greatly improved, and it is not difficult to remember more than a dozen addresses. Lu Chuang didn't stop, and asked several questions in a row. After receiving Kun En's answer, Lu Chuang shot Kun En with satisfaction, and helped the other party get rid of it completely. Back in front of the blade soldier, Lu Chuang kicked the blade soldier. Don't pretend, with your physique, this injury should have recovered a long time ago. Being exposed by Lu Chuang, the blade fighter stood up expressionlessly. That's not a silver bullet. How did you kill Quinn? You know, ordinary weapons can't kill vampires, so blade fighters' weapons are all made of silver, definitely, not 100% pure silver. Blade fighters don't have such a luxury. The blade warrior observed the warhead on the ground. Although Lu Chuang's bullet seems to have been modified, the material is not made of silver, and it is logically impossible to cause damage to Quen, let alone kill him directly. Lu Chuang said cheerfully, "It's just a special method." The blade warrior frowned. "Who are you?" After hearing the conversation between Lu Chuang and Kun just now, Warrior Blade can basically confirm that Lu Chuang is not a vampire. As for the half-human, half-vampire, Warrior Blade doesn't feel like it either. In this case, the blade fighters have no reason to regard Lu Chuang as an enemy. Although the blade warrior killed many vampires, few humans died in his hands. Lu Chuang showed a gentle smile. "Can't you tell, I'm a priest, and I came here to exorcise demons." The blade warrior glanced at the firearm in Lu Chuang's hand, and shook his head decisively. "I can't see it." If the other party is a vampire hunter, he can understand it, but this is the first time that the blade fighter sees a priest who is better at shooting guns in close combat than him. "You are a newcomer who just debuted. What age is it? No one thinks that priests use a cross to exorcise demons." Lu Chuang looked at Warrior Blade with contempt, as if looking at a young man who had never seen the world. Vampires will follow the trend and open internet celebrity bars. Why is it strange that our church uses technological weapons? Warrior Blade knows what Lu Chuang refers to as an online celebrity bar. He has been tracking Dick and Firth and has mastered a lot of Dick and Firth sites. Some time ago, he wanted to go to that bar to get rid of the vampires there, but when he got there, he found out that it had been transformed into an internet celebrity bar. So he found a place to sit down and observe, and ordered a glass of wine by the way, wanting to see what kind of tricks these vampires were planning to do, but after looking for a long time, he didn't find anything unusual, and he didn't see any vampires, but it was a bar. The waiter looked nice and ordered another glass of wine. Couldn't find any clues. Warrior Blade just checked out and left, and he was completely dazed the moment he picked up the bill. Nima, 2 glasses of wine cost thousands of USD. What a bunch of vampires. Although Warrior Blade kills vampires everywhere and breaks into private houses with weapons, he is still a good citizen who abides by the law. Even though he knows that this is a bar run by vampires, he still gritted his teeth and paid in the end. Now he is almost poor, can't open the pot. At the beginning, he shot 2 vampires with a gun, and he immediately changed to a long sword. There was no way, mainly because silver bullets were too expensive, so he had to save some consumption. Thinking of a lot of bad things, the blade soldier's face became even darker, and he said, "I never heard of priests' exorcism or vampires before." Lu Chuang Jonko came. "It's normal. This is the secret operation force of the church, and it is not disclosed to the outside world, and I am an intern of this secret operation force. The content of the internship is to eliminate the vampires in New York." The corner of the blade soldier's mouth twitched, and he was also a secret operation force. "Your church is very advanced." "I know you don't believe it, just watch it." Lu Chuang muttered something, and still threw a blow to the blade warrior. "May the holy light protect you." The blade warrior couldn't see mana, but he could feel that his condition was much better. "What is this?" Warrior Blade was a little surprised. "This is holy light, and it is also the way to kill that vampire just now. It has powerful power against dark creatures." Lu Chuang looked at the blade warrior with a surprised expression on his face. "You're a half-vampire, and you're fine. It's really strange." Blade warrior. The faces of the blade fighters were all black. "What does that surprised look on your face mean? Even you don't know if it works, so just use me as an experiment." Lu Chuang's micro eyes. The soul of the blade fighter is normal, not a mass of carrion like other vampires, which may be the reason why the blade fighter can get the purification gain. "I just don't know if killing the opponent can increase mana in the same way. After all, the blade warrior can be regarded as half a vampire." Warrior Blade instinctively felt a chill, and said, "So, your goal is those vampires?" "Yes." Lu Chuang picked up the silver long sword on the ground, put it in his hand and looked at it. Silver weapons are extremely harmful to vampires, but the material is originally soft, so it is generally impossible to use them as weapons. Obviously, the weapons of blade warriors all are specially built. "Newcomer, you are very good. Are you interested in joining my team and we will fight vampires together?" Lu Chuang extended an invitation to the blade warrior. With the help of this vampire expert, his next move will be smoother. Soldier Blade frowned. He was used to being alone and had no intention of joining any organization at all. What if I say I'm not interested? Lu Chuang looked serious, and pulled out the silver long sword directly. I didn't expect there is another one here. Oh no, it's half a fish that slipped through the net. Blade Warrior. Okay, I'll join. Warrior Blade knew that Lu Chuang's next destination was likely to be Dickon Firth's territory. Since the goals are the same, the Blade fighters are temporarily matched. The main reason is that he can't beat Lu Chuang. He still has a lot of things to do. He doesn't want to die here for no reason, and he doesn't want to be killed by the reason of exorcism. Blade Soldier was exorcised by a passing priest. If the news got out, the group of vampires would probably die laughingly. At worst, they would quit the team after completing their goals. Lu Chuang put away the long silver sword and laughed loudly. I was joking with you just now. I am a priest. How could I do such a thing? You are welcome to join, rookie. The Blade Warrior said quietly. That's my sword. Oh yes, I almost forgot. Look at my memory, I'll return it to you. Lu Chuang returned the silver long sword to the Blade Warrior as if he had just discovered the silver long sword. F*K the priest. The Blade Warrior took back his silver long sword and the shotgun he threw away at the beginning, lest Lu Chuang, a cheeky priest, would secretly pick it up. He didn't have extra money to make new weapons. The two didn't stay long. After all, those escaped humans might have already called the police. They didn't want to wait for the police to come, so they made an appointment with the location and time of their actions, and left the bar one after another. Before leaving, Lu Chuang asked the Blade fighters for some equipment and weapons, saying that he would take them back for research. Warrior Blade wanted to refuse, but as Lu Chuang threw a large amount of banknotes over, Warrior Blade was furious on the spot. He took off his clothes and gave Lu Chuang all the equipment and weapons on his body. If Lu Chuang hadn't tried his best, stop it, I'm going to break off half of Blade's sunglasses and give it to Lu Chuang. The next day, at 2 o'clock in the morning, Lu Chuang drove his motorcycle into an alley. You are late. The voice of the Blade Warrior came from behind. Lu Chuang looked back, but he couldn't see the figure of the other party. He looked left and right. Blade, where are you hiding? I'm right in front of you. Lu Chuang squinted his eyes, and then saw the soul of the Blade Warrior appearing in front of his eyes, and asked, It's so late at night, why do you still wear sunglasses? Warrior Blade didn't answer this question, and said to himself, I checked, and there are indeed a large number of vampires gathered in that underground casino, and there are 2 elite vampires. Lu Chuang didn't understand and asked, What is a vampire elite? The Blade Warrior looked at Lu Chuang suspiciously, as if saying that you, a professional in exorcism, don't even know this kind of common sense. I told you, I'm an intern. Lu Chuang said without changing his face. The Blade Warrior explained. They are combatants among vampires. They have only a small amount of human blood in their blood, and most of them are vampire blood. They are high-level vampires inferior to pure blood, so their combat effectiveness is 970% higher than that of ordinary vampires. They are all stronger and harder to kill. Even with garlic essence, it is difficult to kill them directly. Intern Lu Chuang continued to ask, What is a pure blood? Warrior Blade's expression was stiff. He found that he seemed to be cheated. This guy must be a newcomer. The matter has come to this point, and it is difficult for the Blade Warrior to get rid of Lu Chuang and act alone, and said with a headache, Pure blood is the most powerful existence of vampires, and there is no human blood in their blood. It is 100% vampires, not human beings who are later transformed by vampires. Sure enough, having a professional is handy. Lu Chuang suddenly realized. You mean, the less human blood in the bloodline, the stronger the vampire, right? The Blade Warrior nodded. Lu Chuang scratched his head. No, why are you half human and half vampire so strong? Could it be that vampires are like Saiyans, half of human blood is cheating? Warrior Blade said he didn't want to explain this problem, threw away Lu Chuang and left towards the destination. Hey, don't go, I still have questions to ask. According to Quinn's information, Lu Chuang and Blade fighters arrived at their destination, a large-scale underground casino. Speaking of it, the sights of these vampires are no different from ordinary gangsters. They are either bars or casinos, which are not visible places, which are very suitable for creatures like them who can only hide in the dark. The Blade fighter hid in the shadows with his own racial ability, and said in a deep voice, There are 4 vampires at the door, and we will deal with 2 of them by ourselves. Lu Chuang shook his head. No, leave it to me. With that said, Lu Chuang walked out of the corner and walked towards the casino swaggeringly. The appearance of Lu Chuang instantly made the 4 vampires on duty at the door focus their attention. There was no way, at the moment Lu Chuang was wearing a black mask, with a pair of eyes looming in the empty eye sockets. It was impossible not to attract attention. Disaster. Seeing such a suspicious guy, the two vampires frowned and walked forward, about to question Lu Chuang. Suddenly, the masked men in front of them rioted. In the blink of an eye, Lu Chuang leaned over and rushed in front of the two vampires while the strong wind was howling. At the same time, he stretched out his 5 fingers and firmly grasped their necks. Purify. Before the rest of the vampires could react, they saw their companions turned into a pile of ashes in the hands of the masked man. Mask blessing. In the state of wearing a mask, the physical fitness is doubled. This is the hallmark of a super high school level wrestler. Today's Lu Chuang's physique is so powerful. After doubling his physical fitness in all aspects has shown explosive growth, which has greatly exceeded the limit of human beings. After killing 2 vampires, Lu Chuang turned his eyes to the remaining vampires. The 2 vampires suddenly felt chills in their backs, bared their ferocious fangs, and wanted to fight back, but in the face of absolutely overwhelming strength, their resistance was doomed to be futile, and they quickly followed their companions and lost. The Blade Warrior who witnessed all this was quite shocked, walked over and asked, "Are you really human?" Lu Chuang waved his hand modestly, "No, I'm just born with supernatural power." Warrior Blade rolled his eyes. He was born a half vampire, but he couldn't kill 4 vampires with his bare hands. Without dwelling on this topic, the Blade Fighter walked into the casino first with a weapon in hand. For this operation, the two did not make any detailed plans in advance. They are all real fighters, and they are done. When they walked into the underground casino, they smelled a strong smell of blood. They saw dozens of vampires sucking the blood of living people, and beside them were shriveled corpses scattered on the ground. Hearing the movement, the vampires looked up at Lu Chuang one after another. Dozens of pairs of blood pupils looked very piercing. As for the blade fighters who followed, they became passively invisible again due to environmental reasons. Not to be outdone, Lu Chuang stared back. "What are you looking at, and then I'll dig out your eyes." The vampires were angry, which human beings were not afraid and terrified when they saw them. This is the first time they have seen such an arrogant human being. They immediately dropped the food in their hands and rushed towards Lu Chuang like beasts. Lu Chuang kicked the vampire in front of him, then took out a grenade with a unique shape, opened the insurance, and threw it directly at the place where there were the most vampires. ZAA. This grenade did not explode like an ordinary grenade, but burst out with strong ultraviolet rays, which quickly spread around. The vampires covered by the ultraviolet rays didn't even make a scream. They instantly turned into ashes and disappeared on the spot. Dozens of vampires were directly emptied by Lu Chuang. "What is this?" the blade soldier asked in surprise. "Ultraviolet grenade. Transform with your UV lamp and phosphorescent material." While talking, Lu Chuang took out a few more ultraviolet grenades and threw them at the vampires who wanted to escape. No matter how fast they were, they couldn't be faster than the ultraviolet coverage speed. The mana in Lu Chuang grows again. The Blade Warrior was silent. In just one night, Lu Chuang actually upgraded his equipment. Compared with Lu Chuang, he is a poor and backward fighter. The Blade Warrior sighed, and could only draw his sword to deal with 1 or 2 fish that slipped through the net, and it was too late for Lu Chuang to stop them. However, now Lu Chuang doesn't care about that bit of mana anymore, so the blade fighters take care of it. As Lu Chuang walked into the depths of the casino, he used ultraviolet grenades to open the way. This time, he brought enough firepower to blow it up all night without any problem. There is a saying that is good: if you are poor, your tactics will be roundabout, and if you are rich, you will be covered by firepower. Lu Chuang didn't care about ammo consumption at all, and he didn't care if there were vampires nearby, and just covered the entire area with ultraviolet light to ensure that no vampires were hiding. The blade fighter was envious for a while, but unfortunately, he couldn't afford this fill money style of play. On the other hand, the vampire was beaten to the point of collapse by Lu Chuang. He couldn't run, and wanted to fight back, but he couldn't get close to Lu Chuang at all. Finally, a vampire couldn't stand it anymore. Taking advantage of the gap when Lu Chuang had just finished throwing the ultraviolet grenade, a figure came out from the corner. The speed was much faster than ordinary vampires, and it came to kill Lu Chuang 5 meters away. Lu Chuang raised his eyebrows. This should be the vampire elite that the Blade Warrior mentioned. The sharp claws strike through the air. Facing the vicious attack of the vampire, Lu Chuang did not dodge or dodge, but the vampire's claws fell on him head-on. A click. Under the terrifying power, the vampire's arm broke instantly. When the vampire was forcibly stopped, he suddenly felt his body lighten. Mid-air. Immediately afterwards, Lu Chuang suddenly raised his knees. Accompanied by the scalp-numbing cracking sound, the vampire's spine bent at 90 degrees, deformed and turned into ashes. Warrior Blade's eyelids twitched. Isn't the priest really a murderer? Why does he feel that this guy is more cruel than himself? Bump. The red wine glass shattered, the wine splashed, Fez roared angrily like a beast with red eyes. In just 2 nights, we lost a full 6 territories, and hundreds of vampires died. The vampire subordinates in front of him didn't dare to refute, they lowered their heads and let Faith vent. After venting indiscriminately, Faith grabbed his subordinate's collar fiercely. Find out, who are those damned attackers? The vampire subordinate replied in a low voice. According to the information we investigated, the attackers are Daywalker and a mysterious person wearing a mask. Hearing this, Faith's anger welled up again, and 2 ferocious fangs appeared in his mouth. What are you all doing? So many vampires can't stop the useless guards of the 2 groups of people. At this time, a blonde female vampire beside Faith said, Faith, they will probably continue to make trouble in the future. Why don't we set a trap and kill them directly, so that no one can stop us anymore? Daywalker can't die, I have to live. Faith looked at the vampire subordinates with a gloomy expression. As for that masked guy, find a way to kill him, don't let him hinder us. After the vampire subordinates left in response, Faith pondered for a while on the spot. It's time to prepare to wake up those 12 old immortals. They have been raised for so long, and now it's time to play their role. Finally going to start that project. Hearing Faith's words, the female vampire showed excitement. Faith licked his tongue, and his scarlet blood eyes flickered with madness. That's right, as long as this plan is successful, the world will be replaced by us vampires, and all human beings will be our food. After 2 days of action, the cooperation between Lu Chuang and Blade Fighters became more and more tacit. Since vampires move at night, they can only act after midnight. In order to ensure efficiency, every time Lu Chuang directly scrubs the ground with firepower, the Blade Fighters are responsible for clearing out the fish that slipped through the net by chance, so no vampire will be let go. Lu Chuang and Warrior Blade once again swept one of the vampires' arenas, then rushed to the next arena without stopping. Both of them knew very well that the vampires would probably notice their actions soon, and they had to get rid of more vampires before the vampires took any action. It's a bar again. Are all the bars in New York contracted by these vampires? Lu Chuang couldn't help complaining when he saw the destination this time. This was already the 4th bar they had seen. The Blade Soldier calmly said, You'd better be cautious, those vampires should know about our actions, maybe they will send more helpers. Lu Chuang's eyes lit up. Wouldn't it be better like this? Warrior Blade was speechless. He found that Lu Chuang seemed to be particularly keen on killing vampires. Lu Chuang also explained that he was doing business, which would allow him to change from an intern to a regular employee faster. Skillfully dealt with the guards at the door, when they stepped into the vampire's bar, the experienced 2 instantly revealed that something was wrong. This is a trap, the Blade Soldier said in a deep voice. As soon as the words fell, a shadowy figure jumped out from the darkness and rushed directly to the 2 people's positions. Lu Chuang didn't panic at all, the muscles of his lowered right arm tensed suddenly, and he punched out like lightning. Boom. Amidst the dull and loud noise, an attacker who was about to pounce on Lu Chuang was instantly smashed into the air. Carrying terrifying power in his body, several attackers who hit the rear flew upside down together. The furnishings of the bar were smashed to pieces and collapsed, made countless fragments flying in all directions. But the Blade Fighters beside Lu Chuang were not so lucky. Although the Blade Warrior also reacted in time, there were too many figures who had no choice but to pounce on him. In the blink of an eye, they were already covered in big men, and they were directly knocked out of the bar. Lu Chuang silently prayed for the Blade Fighter teammate for half a second, then turned his gaze to the attackers. Unsurprisingly, the attackers were red-eyed and sharp-toothed vampires. There are probably dozens of them. Lu Chuang smacked his mouth and said arrogantly, One hits dozens, the current situation is very unfavorable to you. Lu Chuang is about to break Ip Man's record of hitting 10 with 1. The next moment, he saw these vampires suddenly took out guns from their arms, and pointed their guns at him. Lu Chuang. Ah. As a modern vampire and a vampire in America, how could he not know the function of firearms? Countless bullets came out of the chamber. Lu Chuang immediately found a bunker to hide when he saw that the situation was not good. Before he could take out the ultraviolet grenade, several grenades fell directly in front of him with a bang. These vampires obviously came prepared and knew Lu Chuang's style of covering fire, so they used their Dao also treated his own body, and dealt with Lu Chuang with more powerful firepower. Boom. Accompanied by huge amounts of explosions, the bunker was directly blown into pieces, and thick smoke full of gunpowder smoke rose. Seeing this, the vampires stopped shooting. In their view, it was impossible for Lu Chuang to survive under such power, unless the other party was also a vampire with regenerative healing factor. Several vampires walked towards where Lu Chuang was, ready to examine Lu Chuang's body. Bang! 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 The gunshot exploded suddenly, and several bullets drilled out of the smoke, hitting the foreheads of these vampires with incomparable precision, turning them into ashes on the spot. Before the other vampires came back to their senses, an ultraviolet grenade was thrown out of the smoke, and it exploded in the air at the right time. The light visible to the naked eye instantly covered the entire area, and a large group of vampires disappeared, and the gun in his hand fell on land. Suddenly, Lu Chuang, holding a pistol, jumped out of the smoke, his pupils kept zooming, and he pulled the trigger without even looking. Bang 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 banga. Gunshots that were as fast as submachine guns sounded, and the bullets with mana locked every vampire. No matter how fast the vampires were, they couldn't beat the speed of the bullets. In just a few breaths, more than a dozen vampires were beaten into ashes. The frightened vampires tried to raise their guns to fight back, but in the eyes of Lu Chuang, who turned on the bullet time, all the bullets were traceable. With strong physical fitness, a black figure quickly shuttled through the hail of bullets. Almost never stopped shooting. What kind of monster is this guy? The vampires were terrified, and at the moment they looked more like puny humans than Lu Chuang roaming in the rain of bullets. Half a minute later, Lu Chuang was the only one left in the devastated bar. After finishing off these vampires, Lu Chuang walked out of the bar and looked around, but he didn't see the blade fighters. Only a few vampires stayed in place and waited. There were pools of blood on the ground, as well as a long silver sword that was forgotten on the ground, proving that fierce battles also took place here. Seeing that Lu Chuang walked out of the bar unharmed, their expressions were extremely shocked. Lu Chuang didn't care what they thought. He raised his gun and directly exploded their legs and hands, ignoring their screams, and blocked the open mouth of a vampire with the muzzle of the gun, the still hot barrel burning the mouth. The pain made the vampire struggle frantically. Lu Chuang asked, "Tell me, where is Blade?" "No, no, no. If you don't want to say yes, it's very good and has backbone." Boom. Lu Chuang really broke the gun and beat the vampire into ashes. The rest of the vampires were dumbfounded. "You should open your gun and let him talk." Lu Chuang used the same technique to gag another vampire's mouth. "Where is Blade? I'll give you 3 seconds. M. The vampire's eyes widened and he signaled Lu Chuang to move his gun away. He wanted to confess. Lu Chuang was silent for a few seconds. "What are you looking at?" "Vampire." Boom. Seeing Lu Chuang's insane behavior, the last vampire didn't wait for Lu Chuang to come over, and was frightened to confess everything. "Let me go. I know where Daywalker is." "No, it's Blade. He was captured by our companions. Faith asked us to do this. He asked us to send Blade to the Palace of Eternal Night. The address is at." The vampire Bala Bala revealed everything, for fear that Lu Chuang would put the muzzle of the gun directly into his mouth. Lu Chuang memorized the position, looked at the vampire who kept begging for mercy, and smiled slightly. "Yes, I like an honest child like you." After speaking, Lu Chuang turned and left. Seeing that Lu Chuang had really left, the vampire who had escaped from the dead was suddenly overjoyed. He was about to rush to this ghostly place, when he suddenly found that he could not move his hands and feet, and the magic power still remained in his body, constantly corroding his wounds. The vampire looked at the sky. There was a faint light in the darkness, obviously preparing for dawn. Fact. After learning that the Blade Warrior was captured by the vampire, Lu Chuang was not in a hurry to catch up. Since the purpose of the vampires was to capture the Blade Fighters, there should be no danger to the Blade Fighters' lives in a short period of time, and now that it was almost dawn, those vampires would have to wait until the next night at least if they wanted to do something. Taking advantage of this time gap, Lu Chuang went home to refill his ammunition. Until night fell again, Lu Chuang drove to the place that the vampire said, which was located in a remote area under development. He could see some construction equipment placed here, but these equipment were in a non-operational state. No signs of construction, more like a cover for people. Under the cover of night, Lu Chuang crouched behind the mound and observed the construction site from a distance. A 2-meter-high barbed wire fence surrounds the perimeter, and many figures with guns are patrolling back and forth. Obviously, such defensive measures will definitely not be an ordinary construction site. Seeing the vampires in the distance, Lu Chuang knew he had found the right place. Through the bright lights, he could clearly see some vampires coming out of the interior, and then carrying boxes of unknown goods into it. After observing for 5 minutes, Lu Chuang slid down from the back of the mound and sneaked towards a vampire carrying goods. Crack. The next moment, Lu Chuang jumped up violently, directly twisting off the vampire's neck from behind, and at the same time mana poured into the opponent's body. The moment the other vampires were about to turn their heads, the vampires turned into ashes and disappeared in place, and the goods in their hands fell to the ground. What sound? At the moment Lu Chuang had already disguised himself as that vampire, pretending to be embarrassed and said, "Just now I saw a mouse running by, and I was startled." Hearing Lu Chuang's words, one of the vampires expressed disdain. "You, a vampire, are still afraid of mice. It's a shame to us. Okay, hurry up and transport the things there. If there is a delay, Faith will never let us go," another vampire urged. It may be because they are not familiar with the original owner. These vampires did not notice the difference in Lu Chuang's voice, and they did not doubt Lu Chuang. It is even more impossible to think that their companions were changed in an instant. Lu Chuang picked up the fallen goods again, followed the team into the construction site openly, and finally came to a tunnel leading to the ground. Passing through the tunnel, Lu Chuang discovered that there is an extremely wide space hidden underground. The overall space is in the shape of a cylinder, with a depth of tens of meters. Lu Chuang has the talent of a super university-level architect. At a glance, he can tell that this building has a long history. The old and dilapidated walls are covered with all kinds of weird runes, which seems a bit mysterious. On the highest point of the wall, a strange statue with huge amounts of looks down on everyone. Lu Chuang knew that this place should be the Palace of Eternal Night mentioned by the vampires, and it was here that the blade fighters were captured. Lu Chuang followed the team while observing the situation of the building. There are a lot of vampires here. There are at least 100 vampires within his line of sight, scattered in every corner of the building, and the defenses are extremely tight. And in the center of the building is a place similar to an altar, with strange patterns engraved on the circular ground, and 12 pillars that are also printed with runes stand around the periphery. Faith stood in the center of the altar, his eyes full of anticipation. Bring them up. Soon, the vampire's subordinates took 12 vampires to the altar and tied them to different pillars. A vampire yelled at the man standing in the middle of the altar. "Fez, you stupid bastard. You really believe in the blood god legend that song is just 10 false fairy tales of Blood Clan." Generally, vampires with high status call themselves Blood Clan, and in their view, vampires are the title of low-level vampires. Since it's a fairy tale, why should you be afraid, old man? Whether this legend is true or not, we will know later. Faith sneered. His decision would not be shaken by one or two words from the other party, especially the vampire elder in front of him. Because what he is about to do is to sacrifice these elders from the oldest vampire family, and they are also the most powerful pure blood among vampires. At that time, he will become the legendary blood god, and neither vampire nor human can stop his footsteps. It's time for you old bastards to contribute. Firth stretched out his hands and said like an orator. Tonight, the era of human beings will come to an end. We vampires will no longer compromise with humans. No more compromises with humans. No more compromises with humans. Other vampires echoed loudly, and the vampires around Lu Chuang also shouted excitedly. Lu Chuang tried to maintain his vampire character as much as possible, pretending to be excited and shouted, "Me too." Hearing the cries of the vampires, the faces of the group of vampire elders were full of resignation and anger. Knowing that the situation was irreparable, they cursed Fei Si, but Lu Chuang heard a lot of information. Different vampire families have different factions. In order to prevent conflicts and struggles among the vampires, the pure bloods, as the rulers, set the rules. Every once in a while, a vampire elder is in power, and the other elders continue to sleep. They will only wake up again when it is their turn to take power. However, the vampire elders never expected that they were suddenly awakened collectively a few days ago, and before they jumped out of the coffin, they saw Faith leading a large number of vampires and pointing guns at them. This group of vampire elders who have been sleeping for an unknown number of years have long been out of touch with the times. An older vampire elder thought it was a firearm loaded with bullets in his era, and jumped up with a snap, very fast. Then, the vampire elder was almost shot to death. Because the bullets are silver-plated, no one stipulates that vampires cannot use weapons against vampires, just like atomic bombs, although they can kill deadmans, but the controllers are humans themselves. Under the sanction of modern weapons, these purebloods were directly tortured to the point of suspecting ghosts, and finally they could only succumb to Faith. Later, the vampire elders found out that during their slumber, Faith ignored the internal rules of vampires and created a large number of new vampires in order to continuously expand his power. Prior to this, Faith had successfully controlled the vampire elders in power, and hollowed out all the power of their family. When they woke up, there was only a useless layer of elders left. It has to be said that this Fez is also very powerful. Just an ordinary vampire directly stepped on the heads of a dozen purebloods. If it is placed in a novel, it will be a proper waste material flow script. After Firth's provocative declaration, the vampires' emotions reached the extreme, as if they saw the future of vampires ruling mankind. After walking a few steps, Several vampires intercepted Lu Chuang's transporting team. Fez said that no one else is allowed to approach the altar. Please make an inventory, and then we will transport it there. This guy is pretty cautious. Lu Chuang dispelled some thoughts. There are too many vampires here, and it is not easy to do it directly. Okay. The vampire who transported the team nodded, and then opened the box, which was actually full of blood bags. Seeing that the packaging was marked with various models, it was obvious that they were all taken out of the hospital. Immediately afterwards, they picked up a pack of blood bags at the same time, gently tore open a corner of the package, and poured the blood into their mouths to taste. Good stuff. No heavy metals, no viruses, just normal blood. It's true blood. The vampire in charge of guarding noticed Lu Chuang, who was not moving, and scolded. What are you doing? Don't hurry to try it. Those human capitalists are very black-hearted. There may be adulteration in the blood. Let me check it carefully. Lu Chuang. Lu Chuang nodded, and followed other vampires to tear open the blood bag. Definitely, it is impossible for Lu Chuang to really drink human blood. He couldn't stand such grievances, so he just borrowed a position to taste the gesture. In fact, not a drop of blood leaked out, and poured a lot of mana into the blood bag. I don't know if the periodic table of elements has exploded, but the supernatural elements must have seriously exceeded the standard. Lu Chuang gave a thumbs up, indicating that there is no problem with the blood. After confirming that the blood was correct, the vampire took all the boxes and left. However, the transport team that Lu Chuang was in did not leave, and they were all left behind to assign other tasks. Coincidentally, the job assigned to Lu Chuang was actually to guard the imprisoned blade fighters. Sure enough, the blade warrior was not killed after being taken away, but was locked into a huge amounts of stone box as one of the conditions for blood god sacrifice. Lu Chuang obediently obeyed his orders and came to the secret room where the blade warriors were held. There were 2 vampires guarding the room, and a dark-skinned female vampire who seemed to be Fez's concubine. Otherwise, it would be difficult to explain why she appeared in this room in pajamas. Place. Greeting the vampire's suspicious gaze, Lu Chuang smiled and said, I was transferred here to take care of the job. The vampires had no doubts and allowed Lu Chuang to approach, but unexpectedly, Lu Chuang raised his arms suddenly and crushed the necks of the 2 vampires instantly. The 2 vampires fell to the ground and then turned into ashes. Killing a vampire with bare hands. The female vampire was shocked, and when she was about to shout out, Lu Chuang grabbed her and threw her in front of the stone box, took out a pistol and aimed it at her head, and said, My bullets are silver-plated, do you want to see it? Out of the desire to survive, the female vampire quickly shook her head and refused, for she was allergic to silver. Then open this thing for me. Lu Chuang pointed at the stone box with the muzzle of the gun. Forced by Lu Chuang's astonishing force, the female vampire could only do it obediently. She groped in the stone box a few times, and the stone box slowly split apart, revealing the horrible body of the blade warrior. I saw a sharp blade on each of the 2 wrists of the blade soldier, which had already cut his wrist, and blood dripped continuously from the wound, flowing down along the lines of the stone box. Even the natural skin color of the blade fighters can clearly see a trace of paleness, which is the manifestation of excessive blood loss. Without the support of the stone box, the blade warrior fell directly to the ground. Lu Chuang squatted down and patted Blade on the cheek. Blade, wake up. Seemingly hearing Lu Chuang's voice, the blade warrior gradually reacted, and raised his head to look at Lu Chuang. His blood-red eyes were full of madness and bloodthirsty. His whole body was like a beast that had lost its mind. Ha! The blade fighter suddenly exploded, so fast that he didn't look like a wounded person at all. He opened his mouth wide, revealing 2 sharp fangs, biting Lu Chuang's neck hard. Blade, wake up, we are teammates, don't force me to hurt you. As Lu Chuang said so, his right hand slapped the blade warrior away without any hesitation. The terrifying force struck, and the blade warrior spun 720 degrees in midair and finally fell to the ground in a dog-eating posture. The female vampire was dumbfounded. Are you sure you are teammates and not enemies? However, Warrior Blade did not die on the spot, and extremely pure energy was pouring into his body. The blood in Blade Warrior's eyes gradually receded, the wounds on his body also healed quickly, and his skin color began to melt into the darkness. Blade, are you alright? Lu Chuang walked over and asked with concern. Ha! At this moment, the Blade Warrior suddenly turned around and rushed towards Lu Chuang. Unexpectedly, as soon as he turned his head, he saw Lu Chuang looking at him kindly, with the gun pointed at his forehead. The Blade Warrior froze in place for an instant. Lu Chuang looked sad. Sorry, my teammate, I failed to cure you and turned you into a monster. Don't worry, I will take care of you for your inheritance. Just go with peace of mind. Wait, I'm awake, don't shoot. The blade soldier raised his arms with an embarrassed expression. He originally wanted to pretend he wasn't awake and take the opportunity to fight back against Lu Chuang, but he didn't expect Lu Chuang's reaction to be so fast. Really, don't lie to me. Lu Chuang expressed doubts, holding a pistol and looking eager to try. The blade soldier swallowed and nodded affirmatively. Really? Lu Chuang cheerfully put away the pistol. I told you earlier, really, I thought you were possessed by a demon, and you were about to get rid of your karma. Oh no, you were about to end your suffering. Warrior Blade's eyelids twitched. You just wanted to talk about performance, right? Lu Chuang's slap was magical. The purification effect not only healed Blade's wounds, but even suppressed his blood addiction. As a half-vampire, Blade Warrior does not have the messy weaknesses of vampires, but he retains the bloodthirsty characteristics of vampires. As long as he does not eat enough blood for a period of time, Blade Warrior will lose his mind and become bloodthirsty like vampires monster. Under normal circumstances, blade fighters can only slowly regain their sanity if they replenish their blood. But Lu Chuang's purification is more direct, removing the negative status of the blade fighters at once. After all, Bruce Banner's Hulk can be forcibly suppressed, not to mention the bloodthirsty status of the blade fighters. Although Lu Chuang's methods were relatively rough, the blade fighters were still very grateful to Lu Chuang for taking the risk to rescue him. The blade soldier looked at the trembling female vampire. A flash of determination flashed in his eyes, and said in a deep voice, "All my equipment has been taken away by the vampire, can you lend me the pistol?" Lu Chuang guessed what the blade fighter was going to do, poured mana into the bullet in the pistol, and threw the pistol over. The blade soldier took the pistol and pointed it at the female vampire. Seeing this, the female vampire was a little panicked. She stepped back and begged, "No, you can't do this, I'm your mother, you can't kill me." With the strength of the blade fighter, naturally he would not be captured by those vampires so easily. The main reason is that his biological mother, who had been dead for many years, suddenly appeared in front of him, and attacked him as a vampire. A trance and miss. Compared with the physical torture, the most unbearable thing for a blade fighter is the mother's betrayal. The other party even helped the enemy to capture his own son and use him as a sacrificial sacrifice. After human beings become vampires, some of their humanity has long been obliterated. As Lu Chuang sees it, the body is a monster, and so is the soul. The blade warrior suppressed the grief in his heart. "I will end your pain." After the words fell, the blade fighter pulled the trigger. The female vampire's voice stopped abruptly, and her body turned into a pile of ashes. Boom. Just like the Chong Yao drama, the family drama is often accompanied by thunderstorms. A deafening thunder exploded in everyone's ears, and Lu Chuang could feel the ground trembling under his feet. At the same time, on the altar of the Palace of Eternal Night. This moment has finally arrived. Faith looked at the blood that slowly pooled on the ceiling, with a look of longing and excitement on his face. "Fez, you will kill the entire blood clan, you will regret it." A vampire elder roared hoarsely. He could feel a wave of energy eating away at him. The legend of the blood god is actually true. Even if they lived for hundreds of years, these vampire elders didn't want to die. They struggled crazily, but the energy locked them in place, unable to move at all. "Cowardly old thing. Starting today, I will be the god of vampires." Feth opened his arms frantically to welcome him, and the blood on the ceiling finally condensed into one point, dripping down on his forehead along with the inertia. Boom. Accompanied by the sound of thunder, a blood-red light suddenly burst out from the altar, piercing the sky. The pitch-black night sky suddenly changed, and one after another dark clouds began to gather in the sky, and thunder rolled endlessly in the black clouds, as if a terrifying blow was about to be brewed. With more and more blood on Faith's forehead, a wave of bloody energy surged out from the altar, wrapped around the feet of the 12 elders in Faith, and gradually spread upwards. Faith didn't notice anything unusual, and the 12 vampire elders screamed in pain, as if a pair of invisible hands were tearing at their souls, making them in agony. Boom. A thick thunderbolt suddenly fell, as if it had triggered the device of the Palace of Eternal Night, lighting up all the runes on the wall, including the runes on the 12 stone pillars. The 12 vampire elders let out desperate screams, and the power of thunder along the stone pillar instantly blasted their bodies into ashes, and their souls turned into seemingly tangible frames. But invisible gray skeletons, these gray skeletons have wings on their bodies, flying randomly on the altar, rolling up a strong gust of wind. What the hell? Seeing such a terrifying scene, the vampires shrank their heads in fright, for fear of being attacked by these monsters. However, the target of these skeleton souls is not them. After flying around in the air, they're like birds returning to their nests. Faith's body, and finally disappeared into Faith's body, and became one with Faith. At this moment Faith felt as if his body was about to split open. The blood on forehead gathered into a dot, slowly sinking into his body. "Give me blood," Faith yelled, and the surrounding vampires immediately threw the prepared blood pack over. Faith picked up a packet of blood and bit it down with his mouth open without any hesitation. Suddenly, Faith's eyes widened, and he threw the blood bag straight out. The blood splattered in midair fell on several vampires, as if they had been splashed with sulfuric acid. Foul-smelling black smoke rose from the body, and the flesh and bones quickly dissolved. "This blood is poisonous," Faith exclaimed angrily. However, he had devoured half of his blood without knowing it, and an energy that seemed like a natural enemy rushed into his body immediately. "Ah!" Faith screamed in pain, his body began to dissolve. At this moment, the runes on the altar began to change, converging towards Faith's position. More and more blood-colored energy emerged, pouring into Faith's body crazily as if he didn't need money. Faith's body swelled up at a speed visible to the naked eye, and finally turned into a huge mass of meat exuding a strong bloody smell. The altar was constantly wriggling, and it made people's sanity plummet. Face. The Blade Warrior fell from the sky and landed on the edge of the altar. His eyes were red and he roared at Faith. Faith was originally his enemy, and now with his mother's accusation, the Blade Warrior's murderous intent towards Faith has reached its peak. At the moment, the Blade Fighters have found their equipment, but the silver long sword was left outside the bar yesterday. The Blade Fighters took out their spare silver daggers, went straight to Faith and killed them. Seeing the appearance of the Blade Warrior, the vampire elite guarding the altar were startled at first, but they still remembered Faith's order, immediately intercepted the Blade Warrior, and directly fought with the Blade Warrior. At the same time, the vampires on other floors also noticed the battle at the altar below. A vampire exclaimed, "It's Daywalker, hurry up." Boom. The bullet was entwined with mana, and instantly penetrated the vampire's head. Immediately afterwards, several ultraviolet grenades were thrown to different positions, and the ultraviolet rays spread around in an instant. The vampires within the coverage area had no resistance to ability at all, screaming and turning into a pile of ashes. The vampires hurriedly looked at the attacker, passing the camouflaged sword. Bang. Bang. Banga _ Lu Chuang stood on the commanding heights, holding his two guns in front of his chest, pouring mana into the pistols continuously, and killing the vampires that appeared in sight one by one. The number of vampires continued to decrease, so the vampires outside the altar had to abandon the Blade Warriors, turned their guns to Lu Chuang who was high up, and launched an angry counterattack. Da 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 aa. Tongues of fire erupted in an instant, and the sound of gunfire almost toppled the ceiling. Lu Chuang's pupils suddenly zoomed in. Under slow motion, all the bullet trails were clearly visible. His figure was like a ghost moving through the rain of bullets. The pistol fired continuously at a speed not weaker than that of a submachine gun, sweeping away the vampires on every floor. Even the vampires hiding behind the barriers did not let go. The arc bullets were frequently used, and all kinds of bullet tracks that violated the laws of science were dazzling. "I'm hiding here, I don't believe he can kill. Jack. Why did you die? F*K, I will replace you. Everyone, don't be afraid, you will be the king of guns since the beginning of the day. Run. That guy is a monster." Hearing the sudden stop of one by one companions around them, the vampires felt chills in their bones. The fear of death shrouded in an instant, and they couldn't help but have an illusion in their hearts. They seemed to be surrounded by each other alone. After a short period of self-doubt, the vampires immediately took countermeasures. Dozens of vampires rushed to the floor where Lu Chuang was, or walked the stairs, or climbed the walls, and surrounded Lu Chuang from all directions, intending to encircle him. The threatening Lu Chuang. Facing the swarm of vampires, Lu Chuang simply stopped moving, raised his right foot and stepped heavily on the vampires climbing up from the wall, then raised two modified pistols, and fired wildly at the attacking vampires. The death of the companion, on the contrary, aroused the viciousness of this group of vampires even more. Regardless of the threat of bullets, the vampires attacked Lu Chuang swiftly. Lu Chuang put away the overheated pistol, looked at the vampires who were close at hand, rushed forward instead of retreating, and rushed towards the group of vampires head-on. Get punched out by the nearest vampire. Boom. The face of the vampire suddenly sunken, and the whole person smashed straight into the wall behind in a strangely twisted posture. The body quickly melted away, making the vampire who had just rushed over a little bit stagnant. What kind of vampire is this, so fierce? Taking advantage of the time when the vampires were stupefied, Lu Chuang jumped into the most concentrated part of the vampires, and with his fists condensed with strong mana, he constantly slammed into the surrounding vampires, accompanied by the sound of bones breaking. Lu Chuang's terrifying power is hard for even a vampire's body to resist. With the help of mana, the vampire's body becomes even more fragile. He has only one person, kill him together. Although the vampires are afraid of Lu Chuang's amazing combat power, their numerical advantage doubles their confidence. After all, they are vampires who often appear as villains, and it is normal for a group of people to beat up a person. Seeing vampires blocking all his escape routes, Lu Chuang has no fear, and has the talent of a super high school wrestler. Melee combat has long been not his weakness, but one of his strongest strengths. Lu Chuang grabbed a vampire's arm, exerted force from his waist, and using his shoulders as a support point, he slammed the vampire on his back to the ground. Then he held his head with both hands and twisted it vigorously, and his neck instantly twisted into a ball of twists. Different from WWE's wrestling matches with show nature, Lu Chuang's wrestling techniques are unsophisticated and extremely fierce. Most of the vampires hit by him turned into dust and dissipated on the spot. Only a small part were seriously injured and fell to the ground, but their bodies were also constantly eroded by the mana like a necrosis soul, and they cried out in pain on the ground. Lost Battle Ability 7. Lu Chuang opened his palm and grabbed a vampire's face suddenly. The creepy sound of bone shattering came from between his fingers, and then he precisely grabbed a vampire that was rushing towards him, and pinched the opponent's neck, pressing hard on the ground. His figure suddenly fell, and his knees directly crushed that ferocious head. Come again. Don't stop. Feeling the gradually growing magic power in his body, Lu Chuang grinned wantonly, staring at these vampires frantically. It's like a hungry beast looking at a piece of meat. Seeing such a cruel Lu Chuang, the vampire swallowed his saliva, subconsciously took a few steps back. Compared to them, this guy in front of him seemed more like an evil villain. At the moment, on the highest platform of the Palace of Eternal Night, swarms of vampires filled the entire space in an instant, encircling and suppressing Lu Chuang from every angle. Lu Chuang had almost no place to move, and was inevitably successfully attacked by some vampires, and large and small wounds began to appear on his body, but before Lu Chuang felt unwell, the undead feature was activated instantly, and the wounds automatically appeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. Repair. With Lu Chuang's current self-healing speed, even if he is sent to the hospital with a severed limb, the doctor will say that fortunately he was sent in time, otherwise the wound will heal later. Lu Chuang simply gave up his defense, plunged headlong into the crowd of vampires, and directly resisted the attacks from all directions. He raised his fist and blasted out continuously. Vampires continued to die in his hands, and Lu Chuang's body was constantly injured and injured. Self-healing, completely exchange injuries for injuries. Different from the vampire whose offensive starts to weaken, Lu Chuang is more and more courageous, like a tireless machine. Not Lu Chuang blowing, all day. At the end of the fight, Lu Chuang felt that this kind of killing efficiency was still too slow. Even if he punched a child, it would take a lot of time to deal with so many vampires. But the current situation is not suitable for using faster firearms. Lu Chuang stopped suddenly, facing the tide of vampires. The mana in his body quickly gathered towards his head. At the moment when the vampires were about to engulf Lu Chuang, as if materialized mana burst out suddenly, it turned into dazzling light and spread around, illuminating the entire Palace of Eternal Night. As this, the holy light? Feeling the strong holy breath, the vampires had an idea at the same time. Enveloped by the radiance, the vampires didn't even let out a scream, and their whole bodies were burned instantly, turning into ashes and dissipating. After the light dissipated, only Lu Chuang was left on the platform. Ultimate move to clear the field. Handsome is very handsome, but the consumption is a bit high. Lu Chuang thought in his heart. This move already consumes a lot of energy, not to mention that he spreads the range of holy light to a longer distance. Instead of just attaching to the body surface, the energy consumption is even greater. The move just now directly consumed a quarter of his mana, and this was on the premise that he had already killed hundreds of vampires. If it was changed to a few days ago, it is estimated that he could be squeezed out directly. However, Lu Chuang eliminated dozens of vampires at once, and the mana in his body skyrocketed again. If his mana was the water in the bathtub a few days ago, it is now a pond. At the same time, the fighting on the circular altar was in full swing. When Lu Chuang came down, the blade fighters had already eliminated nearly 10 vampire elites, and were fighting with the remaining 5 vampire elites. And in the center of the altar, there are 4 vampire elites surrounding the huge mass of meat. Even though their companions are fighting with blade fighters not far away, they still stay where they are, as if to protect the huge mass of flesh. It's quite loyal. Bang 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 bang. The gunshot exploded, and the vampire elites in front of the blade warriors tilted their heads and disappeared instantly. I have attracted so many vampires for you, and you haven't solved it yet? Holding the pistol, Lu Chuang ignored the vigilant eyes of the vampire elite and walked slowly through the hospital. The blade warrior remained expressionless. Come on, just give me some more time and we'll be done. Lu Chuang glanced at the scarred body of the Blade Warrior, not bothering to expose this stubborn man. Boom. Without warning, the thunder that was thought to have stopped sounded again. Immediately, the runes on the altar lit up red, and the huge mass of flesh suddenly moved, and its size began to shrink slowly, while skin tissue grew on the body surface, followed by hair, limbs, and 5. Soon, the huge lump of flesh shrank into a human shape, and changed back to Faith's appearance. Even the clothes on his body changed back. At the moment, Faith's face looked abnormally pale, and his body was as thin as a wooden stick, completely disproportionate. He slowly opened his eyes, the whites and pupils of his eyes were covered with blood, and his whole body exuded a coldness, infiltrating breath. This is the power of the blood god. Faith looked at his recast body, raised his hands and muttered to himself. After seeing Faith return to human form, a female vampire elite surprised and said, "Fez, you succeeded?" "Yes, I succeeded, but..." Faith smiled strangely, and suddenly reached out and grabbed the female vampire's neck. Under the unbelievable gaze of the other party, Fez's 2 fangs popped out of his mouth and pierced fiercely into the female vampire's neck. His body swelled up rapidly, and his pale face gradually returned to blood. In less than half a second, the female vampire turned into a shriveled corpse. Obviously, her blood has been sucked dry. A vampire bites a vampire? Lu Chuang's expression was very strange. Some time ago, he asked blade fighters whether vampires could drink the blood of other creatures, such as animal blood, so that he could introduce blade fighters to eat Mao Shuiwang. But the answer of the Blade Warrior is that although the only food for vampires is blood, they only suck human blood. As for the blood of animals are the same kind, for vampires, it is almost like eating shit. Now Faith's actions are undoubtedly the number 1 in the vampire world, and he only needs to call Olage. The eyes of the Blade Warrior and other vampires were also very subtle, but Faith ignored them and threw away this loyal vampire subordinate like trash. Not enough. I need more. Faith roared in a low voice, and grabbed another elite vampire to suck on it again, so fast that even the elite vampires couldn't react. But Firth doesn't seem to be satisfied yet. In the blink of an eye, all the vampire elites guarding Faith's side turned into mummies, and Faith's body completely returned to normal. He wiped off the blood remaining around his mouth, showing a happy expression. The feeling is amazing. Anyway, Lu Chuang didn't understand Faith's operation. Did he pretend to backstab his teammates? Bang. Bang. Banga. Lu Chuang didn't have hesitation, and while Faith was sucking blood, he aimed at Faith's head and shot continuously. The bullets with holy aura shot out, shooting towards Faith's body and head. Too slow. Faith squinted, and the corner of his mouth curled up in a contemptuous arc. The moment the gun rang, his body had already moved, and he raised the mummy in his hand to block in front of him, and most of the bullets hit the mummy. The Blade Warrior didn't watch the show, and shot decisively after Lu Chuang shot, holding the silver dagger behind his back and rushing towards Faith's side. His arm muscles stretched high, and he stabbed into Faith's head with all his strength. Strangely, Faith, who could block even bullets, couldn't block the silver dagger of the Blade Warrior. The head stabbed fiercely into Faith's head, and the entire blade sank into the flesh and blood. However, there was no joy on the Blade Warrior's face, but became dignified instead. Fez in front of him didn't turn into ashes. The silver dagger pierced Faith's head deeply, but he didn't disappear like an ordinary vampire. Faith's blood-red eyes stared at the Blade Warrior, showing a mocking smile. "It's useless. Now I'm like you. I don't have the weakness of a vampire. These methods can't kill me." Suddenly, Faith's figure rose violently. His speed is extremely fast, so fast that even the dynamic vision of the blade fighter is difficult to capture. Waving his arms brings up an afterimage, and the wind pressure roars towards the blade fighter is swept away. Boom. Accompanied by the dull impact sound, the blade soldier spat out a mouthful of blood, and the whole person flew out of the altar in an instant, and fell heavily in front of Lu Chuang. On the altar, Faith reached out and pulled out the silver dagger stuck in his head. The flesh and blood around the wound healed quickly like a torrent of dark plasma, which also showed that the silverware had no effect on him at all. Lu Chuang threw a purification to the Blade Warrior, and the Blade Warrior's injury was slowly repairing. He reluctantly stood up, looked at Faith with a solemn expression, and said in a low voice, "Damn, there seems to be something wrong with this guy Faith. Now his strength and speed are stronger than those of pure blood. See, I'm not blind." Lu Chuang narrowed his eyes. In his eyes, Faith's soul was like a meat dumpling soaked in a pool of blood, filled with rich blood-colored energy. If he guessed correctly, the energy should be the reason why Faith became stronger. Lu Chuang licked his tongue. He could feel the mana in his body becoming active, sending him a signal of desire. I don't know how much mana the blood god can add to him. Firth noticed Lu Chuang's malicious eyes, snorted coldly, and easily pinched the silver dagger in his hand. You are not a vampire, nor are you that blood-sucking bastard blade. Who are you? Lu Chuang's disguised identity was discovered. This is the first time Lu Chuang has been seen through the disguise since he got the camouflage technique. However, Lu Chuang was not surprised either. After thinking about it, he knew that Faith must have some ability to perceive the blood of a vampire, so that he would find out that he is not a vampire. Lu Chuang used camouflage to change into a familiar black robe, with a silver cross necklace hanging around his neck, and his words were pious and gentle. I am the agent of the Lord, the spokesperson of God's punishment on earth. In order to be more in line with the image of the priest, Lu Chuang deliberately changed into the image of a gray-haired middle-aged man, who looks like an honest man handing out leaflets on the street. Father. Faith frowned slightly. A priest and a half-vampire. What kind of weird team is this? But Firth didn't pay much attention to it. In his eyes, the Blade Warrior and Lu Chuang were already two dead men. Even if Lu Chuang was a priest, he could still transform, so he would die in his hands in the end. Faith showed his white fangs, and said disdainfully, from now on, no one can block the way of vampires, and human beings will be driven off the world stage by us soon, and become slaves and food of vampires, and I, Dikon Fez, will be the king of all vampires. Lu Chuang said cheerfully. Just now, the few remaining vampires were all killed by you yourself. Where did we come from? Felston choked for a moment, and he glared at Lu Chuang fiercely. Those useless wastes will die as soon as they die. Give me a little time, and I will be able to rebuild a larger army of vampires. Cities are our base camps. Lu Chuang sneered. He didn't look very good, but he thought it was pretty. If you are really asked to form a vampire army, S.H.I.E.L.D. will be the first to come to you. Nick Fury will definitely not let vampires play monsters in his territory. Maybe they suddenly rise up and decide to form Avengers in advance. Take this first. A group of vampires came to do the surgery. What's more, Nick Fury still has a secret weapon in his hand, a certain ant who is light years away from the Earth. If you recruit her back, no matter how many vampire legions you give you, it will be useless. When Faith heard Lu Chuang's laughter, his eyes instantly turned cold. You're looking for death. After saying that, Faith jumped from the altar, turning into a black shadow and attacking Lu Chuang. Boom. Boom. Booma. Smelling the bloody wind coming towards him, Lu Chuang didn't change his face, and two modified pistols appeared in his hands and fired at Faith. A trace of fear flashed in Faith's eyes. He who became a blood god was extremely sensitive to special energy. He could feel that the energy attached to the bullet was the same as the energy in the bag. Thinking of the bag of blood that almost killed him, Faith didn't take it hard, but chose to dodge. Now his speed is completely capable of dodging bullets. Just as Faith sideways dodged the bullets, the trajectories of the two bullets suddenly changed, drawing a strange arc in the air, and then collided in midair. A bullet hit Faith's back unexpectedly. Ah! Faith howled miserably, clutching his back in pain. I saw a small area on his back that resembled burning marks, and the bullet's damage to him was almost negligible, but the holy energy made him unbearably painful. However, Faith's wound still healed, but the speed of healing was much slower than before. Ha ha ha. I told you, you guys can't kill me. Faith laughed triumphantly. Seeing this scene, the blade fighter frowned. Could it be that the holy light doesn't even work? Mana doesn't work. Lu Chuang narrowed his eyes. No, it still works. He could clearly see the mana eroding Faith's soul, but it was quickly extinguished by the bloody energy in Faith's body. However, the blood pool seemed to have decreased a little, but it wasn't very obvious. That is to say, before the blood energy in the blood pool was completely consumed, Faith could recover like this constantly. In this regard, Lu Chuang was not disappointed. He raised his two guns to his chest and grinned. Sorry, the moment you showed your blood, you were already dead. Boom. Boom. Booma. The holy light bullets escaped, and the dense rain of bullets shot at Faith. However, this time Faith had already prepared himself. 5 black sharp claws popped out from his fingertips, and accompanied by the sound of thunderous metal collisions, the elusive bullet tracks were all blocked by Faith. Useless trick. Faith laughed wildly. The killing intent in the depths of his eyes was strong. He couldn't tolerate Lu Chuang, a human being who could hurt him. If Lu Chuang didn't die, the other party would definitely become an obstacle for him to lead the vampire army to dominate the earth. In Faith's heart, Lu Chuang had already been labeled as mortal. The next moment, Faith's figure was as fast as a ghost, and he appeared in front of the two of them in an instant. The blade fighters couldn't even see Faith's movements clearly, and had no time to defend. Obviously, 283, just now Faith didn't use his full strength. Sharp tearing air sounds hit, and a pungent stench rushed straight into the nostrils. Lu Chuang's pupils suddenly dilated, and adrenaline flooded his whole body. Faith, who was close at hand, seemed to slow down several times suddenly. The ferocious and distorted face was full of cruelty, his 5 fingers were tightly closed, and his sharp claws were like sharp knives. General was about to stab him and blade in the chest. With Faith's strength, if he grasped it firmly, he would undoubtedly pierce through the flesh and blood of the two of them. Although Lu Chuang's physique can barely keep up with Faith's speed, the speed of the car that has just started is naturally faster than the speed of the car that has just started. Seeing that he and the Blade Warrior were going to be smashed into strings by sharp claws, Lu Chuang didn't have any hesitation, and immediately controlled a large amount of mana to flow to his head. In an instant, it was like the light of dawn erupting from Lu Chuang's body. Aha! Faith's whole body was covered by holy energy, and he let out a heart-piercing scream. Under the damage of mana, a large area of AA burn marks appeared on the surface of Faith's body, and more than half of his flesh melted directly, exposing the bloody bones inside. And awful. The strong light swept in all directions, and the Blade Warrior was also involved. His eyes were pierced by the light so that he couldn't open it. Hell. Why do you get tricked even if you wear sunglasses? For beating up his teammates, Lu Chuang did not apologize, and kicked the temporarily blind blade fighter more than 10 meters away, then raised his gun and shot at Faith, saying that he was the best at beating dogs in the water. Bang. Bang. Banga, several holy light bullets poured on Faith's body. Faith's body was like a torrential rain that devastated a pond, his skin and flesh rippled and rippled, but the strange thing was not a single drop of blood flowed from Faith's wound. Until Lu Chuang ran out of bullets in the magazine, Faith's body was already in tatters beyond human shape, his head was beaten into a hornet's nest by the bullets, and he didn't know how many bullets were stuffed in his mouth. However, the seemingly horrific injuries did not kill Faith. I saw the flesh and blood from Faith's wounds squirming wantonly, gathering together like flowing blood to integrate, squeezing out all the bullets in his body, and returning to its original state in an instant. I've changed my mind. I won't kill you directly. I'll cut off your limbs and let you live a life that's worse than death, witnessing the end of humankind. Faith roared fiercely. The self-proclaimed king of vampires was beaten so embarrassingly by Lu Chuang. Faith's self-esteem was severely frustrated, his mentality exploded on the spot, and his body suddenly exploded at a frightening speed, rushing towards Lu Chuang, waving his sharp claws and stabbing at Lu Chuang. Lu Chuang. With super dynamic vision, Lu Chuang bent over and leaned back, avoiding the deadly trajectory of Faith's claws on his abdomen. Suddenly, a rushing sound of breaking through the sky came. Faith's figure unexpectedly stagnated in midair, his right leg swept out suddenly, and kicked Lu Chuang's right shoulder heavily. Boom. Lu Chuang could barely raise his arm to block, and then his arm and half of his shoulder made the sound of bone shattering, and his body flew horizontally, hitting a stone pillar firmly. The surface of the stone pillar shattered like a spider's web, showing a human-shaped depression. Lu Chuang slid down slowly along with the inertia, standing on the ground and barely stabilizing his body's balance. Faith transformed into a blood god is indeed very powerful. Whether it is strength or speed, Faith is far superior to ordinary vampires. Even blade fighters with half-human blood are far inferior to Faith, coupled with the powerful self-healing ability. It is definitely not easy to kill Faith. Seeing Lu Chuang stretching his right arm by his side, Faith was filled with joy, and his smile gradually twisted. Yes, that's it, continue to struggle hard, even if you use that strange method to hurt me. So what, now I am a real regenerative healing factor. Even the sun's ultraviolet rays have no effect on me. What are you going to do? Kill me. His body can continue to recover, and the opponent will only become weaker and weaker due to serious injuries. To use a very popular saying, that is, I can make many mistakes, but you can only make one mistake. In Fez's eyes, Lu Chuang is already a fish on his chopping board, let him slaughter him. Regenerative healing factor. Listening to Firth's standard villain lines, Lu Chuang showed an idiot-like expression. Isn't it self-healing ability, as if no one knows how to say it. In the next moment, under Feth's stunned gaze, Lu Chuang's broken right arm healed quickly. With the crisp crackling sound, all the broken bones of Lu Chuang recovered as before, and the recovery speed was not weaker than that of Faith. A half-vampire whose eyes have not yet recovered. Lu Chuang raised his recovered right arm, took out a black mask from his bosom and gently put it on his face. Then, he looked at Faith, who hadn't recovered from his senses, and said with a grin, "Little bat, let's start the second round." Mask blessing. In the state of wearing a mask, the physical fitness is doubled. Lu Chuang's physical fitness has surpassed the peak of human beings. With twice the blessing, his body soared to a terrifying value. Boom. As soon as the words fell, the stone road under Lu Chuang's feet shattered. With huge amounts of impetus, Lu Chuang crossed a distance of more than 20 meters in the blink of an eye, and came to Faith, without any Watchow's clenched fists. Feth had no time to react, and felt a powerful force reaching his face, and the holy energy poured into his body with his fist, constantly eroding Feth's body and soul, making him in agony. Fez stared at his blood-red eyes, roaring angrily in his heart. Damn it, this guy was obviously injured, why did he recover so quickly? Boom. Another punch. The fist with the strong wind hit Faith's face heavily, and his face suddenly became distorted, accompanied by the sound of skull shattering, which was also mixed with Faith's painful and angry wailing. For Faith, the physical injury is not worth mentioning at all, but the mana full of holy aura spreads crazily along the body, melting Faith's soul. If it wasn't for the blood energy to resist the erosion of mana, he would have disappeared like ordinary vampires. The shattered bones recovered in an instant. Faith's eyes were bloodshot and scarlet. Like a child who had been deceived, he roared angrily. This self-healing ability, you are not human at all. I have said that I am the agent of the Lord. God knows, he is my boss. I can go to heaven to retire after I have done enough performance. Before that, I am immortal. While speaking, Lu Chuang raised his fist and kept punching Faith, causing Faith's body to jump repeatedly between destruction and repair, bit by bit annihilating the bloody energy of Faith's soul. At this time, Faith also felt that the bloody energy in his body was being continuously consumed, and his face instantly became ugly. Bloody energy is his source of power. If the bloody energy is completely consumed, not only will his body become weak at the age of 13, even his life will be threatened. Faced with the threat of his life, Faith could no longer maintain his composure just now. Disregarding the declaration of catching Lu Chuang alive, his whole body burst out of strength, and he waved his hand quickly towards Lu Chuang's head. The tips of his sharp claws flickered coldly under the light. Firth is extremely fast, but Lu Chuang is faster than him. Lu Chuang turned sideways slightly, his sharp claws brushed past him, and pierced through the stone pillar behind him without any hindrance. Bang on Faith's chest. Boom. Faith's facial features were suddenly distorted, and the chest hit by the fist was instantly dented. Lu Chuang took advantage of the opportunity to grab Faith, who was bending over and kneeling, and fell over his shoulders to the ground. His knees pressed against Faith's shoulders so that he could not move. His fists were like heavy cannons, and he beat Faith's head like a violent storm. The sound of cracking fractures can be heard endlessly, quite the style of hitting 10. Flesh throbbed, bones trembled, Faith's newly repaired head shattered again, and was hammered by Lu Chuang so that he couldn't resist at all. Roar. Feeling the severe pain from his body, Faith suddenly opened his mouth and let out a roar, revealing a mouth full of sharp teeth, like serrated blades. Immediately afterwards, Faith's face gradually became wrinkled, and his body swelled up rapidly. A septum similar to a bat's wing appeared in the creaking nest, and a large amount of gray hair grew on the body surface. Faith's size didn't stop until he reached 2 meters, and he looked like a big human bat. After the transformation, Faith's strength soared, and he immediately broke free from Lu Chuang's shackles, appearing a few meters away in the blink of an eye. Lu Chuang didn't chase after him. He looked at Faith's new look and muttered, "This bat is domesticated or wild. If you absorb it, you shouldn't get sick, right? Human, I want you to die." Faith's voice was sharp and piercing, which made Lu Chuang feel a little uncomfortable. When the fierce wind hit, Faith rushed to Lu Chuang in an instant. His body was huge and seemed bulky, but his movements were extremely fast. Waving his sharp claws at an extremely fast speed, he was about to tear Lu Chuang into pieces. Lu Chuang bent down to avoid the sharp claws, and continued to hammer Faith with his fist. However, Faith's gray hair was unexpectedly thick, directly reducing part of the power of the fist, and only the remaining power fell on Faith, but it was difficult to hinder Faith's movements. "Your attack is useless to me." Faith shook his head, only to see flesh and blood surging all over his body. All injuries healed, no damage could be seen at all. That ugly face became more and more distorted, eyes filled with tyrannical malice. "And you, die deal." Regardless of Lu Chuang's attack, Faith suddenly opened his arms and hugged Lu Chuang in his arms. His arm muscles tensed suddenly. "I've caught you." Faith laughed cruelly, with an unpleasant stench coming from his mouth. Lu Chuang was imprisoned by Faith's strong man. His 2 rough long arms locked his body tightly, and he couldn't break free for a while. There was a sound of unbearable weight coming from the arms on both sides. It was obvious that Faith was going to kill a man in his arms. "Don't worry, I will send you to heaven in advance." Faith grinned grimly. He wanted to smash all the joints and bones of Lu Chuang's body. Even if Lu Chuang could self-heal, he could only become his plaything in the end. Facing Faith's strong malice, Lu Chuang said calmly, "Didn't I say, Wei Zhong won't take me in?" After the words fell, Lu Chuang directly started the bullet time. Lu Chuang only felt his blood pressure rise suddenly, his heart beating rapidly, and his pupils dilated and contracted at the same frequency. Time began to slow down. Every hair of Faith became clearly visible, and the details of the changes in expression seemed to come into view as frames of animation. Lu Chuang's emotions became high, adrenaline flooded his whole body, the pain of broken bones also eased, and his muscles and bones made a crackling sound like popping beans. The muscles of the body become stronger. Under Faith's horrified gaze, Lu Chuang forcibly stretched his arms. The broken arm had recovered, and he clasped Faith's wrist in reverse, making it impossible for him to break free. However, hell should take you in. Lu Chuang grinned, and then poured a lot of mana into his right leg, kicking Faith's heel. Mask blessing plus bullet time. With the double buff superimposed, Lu Chuang's strength skyrocketed again. Even if Fespi was rough and thick, he couldn't resist the huge amounts of Liwang. Although the vampire's weaknesses are ultraviolet rays, garlic, silver, etc., Faith is a man first, and the fatal injury of a man is still inevitable. When the vitals were hit hard, Faith curled up his legs and fell to the ground. His eyes gradually became hollow. I don't know whether it is the burning of the mana that hurts more, or the position of the male people. After seeing Faith kneeling down, Lu Chuang immediately triggered the passive of beating the dog in the water, and his fists turned into afterimages and blasted out rapidly. Ola ola ola. Under the shadow of fists all over the sky, Faith's body twisted crazily, and the ground beneath him spread in all directions like a spider web. Faith was terrified and wanted to fight back, but under Lu Chuang's inhuman dynamic vision, all his movements became traceable, and before he got up, he was hammered back to the ground by Lu Chuang. The pair of fists that condensed the holy aura kept beating on Faith's body one after another. Each punch could break Faith's flesh. At first Faith was still able to struggle and resist, but after a few minutes, Faith's body's recovery speed could not keep up with the damage speed. His physical function declined rapidly, and Lu Chuang beat him to a bloody mess. At this moment, Lu Chuang's skin became red, and white smoke visible to the naked eye emitted from his body, which was a symptom of the time load of the bullet. But Lu Chuang didn't stop, and continued to beat Faith, saying, "My mission is to destroy the patients who resist our Lord, even if they have only the last piece of flesh left, amen." The blade warrior who had just recovered his sight saw a white-haired man in a black robe and a strange and eerie black mask, with white smoke all over his body, beating a weak and pitiful bat with both fists, flying in the flesh and blood. In the scene, there are some evil lines on the lips. Warrior Blade fell into deep thought. Is this sure to be the priest of the church, not an undercover agent sent by hell? Boom. 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 A series of beating sounds like a violent storm echoed in the palace of eternal night. At the moment Faith had already been hammered into an inhuman form, but from his painfully distorted face and the frenzied resentment flashing in those blood-red pupils, one could see how unwilling he was. Feeling the rapidly diminishing blood energy, Faith wanted to struggle crazily. As a blood god, he was about to reach the pinnacle of vampires. He didn't want to die aggrieved before stepping out of the starting point. Moreover, he has only lived for less than 100 years, and he has not enjoyed enough prosperous modern life yet. But Faith's struggle is doomed to be in vain. The bloody and brutal wound makes it difficult for him to stand up now, not to mention that Lu Chuang didn't give him a chance at all. Just like a piledriver, his fists crazily kicked Faith's body. Little by little, the blood energy in Faith's body was wiped out. Lu Chuang spit out hot white mist from his mouth. The scorching temperature distorted the surrounding air. The blood vessels in his body contracted and expanded irregularly, and his heart frequency soared to nearly 500. If it were the previous Lu Chuang, no matter how strong his self-healing ability was, his body would not be able to withstand such a high-intensity load, so he just belched on the spot. But now, Lu Chuang's physical fitness is far from the peak of the Superman class. His strong body allows him to resist the side effects of bullet time and maintain the effect of bullet time for a long time. As time went by, the blood pool of Faith's soul was almost low. Lu Chuang was about to strike a fatal blow. Huge mana poured into his fist, forming a layer of faint white light on the outside. Even the blade warrior could feel that holy energy. Immediately, the fist slammed down. No. Faith roared unwillingly, and tried his best to squeeze out the remaining bloody energy. His two arms instantly recovered and resisted Lu Chuang's fist. The holy energy wantonly melted the flesh and blood. Wrestling generally stagnates. Seeing this scene, the blade warrior rushed towards the two of them decisively, swung the silver dagger and slashed at Faith's arm. Although his strength was far inferior to Faith's, it was enough to be the straw that crushed Faith. Finally, the fist condensed with strong magic power landed on Faith's head. Ah! Amidst howling at the bottom of his lungs, Faith's body erupted with dazzling brilliance, like shattered and reassembled glass. Dense cracks appeared on the surface of the body, rapidly drying up and decaying. In an instant, Faith turned into a dry skin and bones with ferocious features, slowly weathered and corroded, turned into ashes and drifted away with the wind under the wind blowing from who knows where. Ba ba ba. The Blade Warrior spat wildly. He happened to be standing downwind and accidentally licked some ashes. At the moment when Faith was killed, Lu Chuang could feel that the mana in his body that was about to be exhausted suddenly surged, and the surging and inexhaustible mana flowed through his whole body, as refreshing as soaking in cold water. And the increased mana is almost 5 times that of his peak state, much more than he killed hundreds of vampires. Cool. Lu Chuang was overjoyed. With the mana in his body now, it is not a problem to produce 100 bottles of universal potion a day. Fighter Blade suppressed his nausea and asked Lu Chuang, "Is that guy dead?" Due to the self-healing ability that Faith displayed was a bit abnormal, the Blade Warrior was not sure whether Faith was really dead. Dead, utterly dead. There was a hint of regret in Lu Chuang's words. It is estimated that it will be difficult to encounter such an experience gift package like Faith again. I don't know if there will be opportunities to obtain such a large amount of mana in the future. Hearing Lu Chuang's words, Warrior Blade heaved a sigh of relief. It's good to die, this kind of guy should go to hell. Lu Chuang glanced at Warrior Blade. He remembered that Warrior Blade's biological mother was Faith's concubine, that is to say, Faith should actually be regarded as Warrior Blade's stepfather. Congratulations to the Blade Fighters for achieving their personal achievement a dad. I feel like you're thinking something very bad. Warrior Blade's eyelids twitched, and he seemed to sense Lu Chuang's full of malice. Lu Chuang decisively denied. No, I was just thinking about a problem. If we keep this altar, those vampires may continue to cultivate new blood gods. Hearing this, the Blade Fighter was immediately diverted and said with a serious expression, I understand what you mean. In order to prevent a situation like Feth from happening again, we must destroy this place. Lu Chuang shook his head. I mean, why don't we leave this place and wait until the next time the vampires are ready to cultivate new blood gods, then we'll come and harvest another wave of vampires and blood gods. You really are an undercover agent sent by hell. Warrior Blade thought it was wrong after thinking about it. He couldn't just misunderstand a righteous priest. Maybe the other party was just trying to brush up his performance? This seems to be even worse. If churches are like this church will be finished sooner or later. Warrior Blade disagrees with Lu Chuang's plan. After all, leaving this altar is a big problem after all, who knows if there are other trigger conditions for the altar. If the vampires suddenly cultivated a large group of blood gods, what kind of vampires did he hunt at that time? The streets were full of blood gods, could he go up there with a silver long sword and scrape them? Warrior Blade directly expressed his objection, but soon, after some tear-jerking persuasion by Lu Chuang, Warrior Blade felt that his vision was still too short-sighted, and finally agreed to keep the altar. Warrior Blade covered his 2 bruised panda eyes, squeezed out a smile and asked, Father A, where is your church? Lu Chuang said lightly, why are you asking this? What to do? Definitely go to Li Chapel and expose you undercover. Warrior Blade remained calm. It's nothing, I want to visit your church and thank them for cultivating you, an outstanding elite. Lu Chuang said cheerfully, so that's the case, I thought you were going to church to expose me. Haha, we are friends who have experienced battles, how could I expose you? A few drops of cold sweat broke out on the blade soldier's forehead. If Lu Chuang knew what he was thinking, with Lu Chuang's fighting power, he would probably hang him up beat. Didn't you see Faith's self-healing ability being hammered into meatballs? Lu Chuang nodded. My church is in room 1001, building 2, Tuandu Garden, Tuandu Street. You are welcome to come anytime. Okay. Blade Fighters remember this address. I believe that soon, an anonymous letter will be sent to the church, signed by Mr. Blade who is unwilling to disclose his name. America, Westchester. In the wilderness area, a purple light curtain appeared out of thin air, and 5 figures walked out from it. Lu Chuang looked at the coordinates of the phone, nodded and said, the coordinates are accurate, it should be here. Looking up, you can see a large rusty iron gate. From the wanton growth of weeds around it, it can be seen that there has been no one to take care of it for a long time. Hearing his words, Clarice behind her immediately closed the portal. Marcus looked at this desolate land, and said with some doubts, are you sure this is the X-Men's base? It used to be the base, Lu Chuang emphasized. Lu Chuang recruited several temporary workers from the Mutant Underground Organization, including Clarice and Marcus, 2 important members of the Mutant Underground Organization. Seeing that Lu Chuang needed help, John agreed without thinking too much. After all, Lu Chuang had helped them so much, and it wasn't that Lu Chuang didn't pay remuneration, and the money for hiring members was deducted from his arrears. According to the address provided by Ivan, Lu Chuang asked Clarice to open the portal and take everyone to teleport. After several times of teleportation and positioning, they finally found the location of the old base of the district police. Lu Chuang cleared away the weeds on the stone pillars, and soon he saw a dilapidated iron doorplate. The English on it had become blurred, but a few words could still be discerned. Xavier Academy for Gifted Boys. Seeing this, Lu Chuang knew he was in the right place. Lu Chuang snapped his fingers lightly, and Clarice immediately understood. Pulling up a small purple light curtain with both hands, Lu Chuang reached into it and groped a few times, and soon took out a glass of steaming Happy Fat House water. Clarice's portal is really convenient. It can be big or small. The big one can be used as a portal, and the small one can also be used as a portable space. Pull a portal directly into the refrigerator, and there are various drinks placed by Lu Chuang inside. It can be taken out to drink anytime. You know, the protagonist in the novel has a personal space. Although Lu Chuang doesn't have a portable space until now, he can create one by himself. So, Lu Chuang spent a sum of money to hire Clarice. Lu Chuang doesn't need Clarice to quit the Mutant Underground organization, he just needs to open a teleportation door when he needs it. Anyway, Clarice can teleport at will within several cities, and then Lu Chuang will make a phone call. Letting Clarice pull the portal directly can be regarded as an alternative version of the portable space. After seeing Lu Chuang's huge amount of employment money, Clarice agreed without hesitation, and signed a long-term employment contract with Lu Chuang. With this money, their Mutant Underground organization can last longer. However, what Clarice doesn't know is that their leader John still owes Lu Chuang a huge sum of money, so the money will go back to Lu Chuang's pocket after going around. Go in and have a look. Lu Chuang happily drank the Happy Fat House water, pushed open the iron gate, and walked inside along the road. Soon, they saw a piece of ruins appearing in front of them. A dilapidated building stands in the middle of the garden. The upper part of the building has collapsed, and rubble and debris are scattered on the ground. Among them, some desks and chairs can be seen as if they were colleges that have experienced the devastation of war. Lu Chuang turned to look at a long-haired man. "It's your job." The long-haired man nodded, and he squatted down, touching the abandoned building with his hands. After a while, the long-haired man said, "I can sense a huge space below, at a depth of about 200 meters. The long-haired man is also a member of the Mutant Underground organization. He has the ability to explore the ground and is most suitable for excavation work." Lu Chuang asked, "Is there a way down?" The long-haired man shook his head and said, "There is only one elevator that can go down, but it has completely collapsed there." "It's not a problem, leave it to me," Clarice said confidently. Immediately afterwards, Clarice closed her eyes, and half a minute later, she opened her arms and opened a new portal. Opposite the portal was a completely dark space without any light. Seeing this, Marcus walked forward consciously, his hands exuding dazzling light, instantly illuminating the internal environment. Lu Chuang nodded in satisfaction. He had to give John a suggestion when he went back. Their organization should change its name. Instead of calling it the Mutant Underground Organization, it should be called the Mutant Underground Talent Market. There is hacker hypnotic ability on the top, and brick moving lighting on the bottom. Talents in any industry can be found here, and professional instruments and equipment are not required. On the Earth before Lu Chuang, such capable employees would definitely be snapped up by various companies. Lu Chuang walked into the portal skillfully. Under the light of Marcus, he found that his position was a long passage. With the help of a super university-level architect, Lu Chuang can see that the walls, ceiling and floor are all made of high-strength titanium alloy. It is not easy to complete such a project in such a deep underground. Not only does it require sufficient manpower and material resources, you also need a good architect. Definitely, there is also the possibility that the architect was able to manipulate metal. Seeing this spectacular underground base, Marco sighed. "Well, I believe this is the X-Men's base. It's just amazing. Compared with our base is a slum." Lu Chuang glanced at Marcus. "As long as you provide enough money and materials, I can build the same underground base. Even if you want to build a White House underground, there is no problem." Marcus smiled awkwardly. He forgot that the architect of his base was here, and the other party was his current boss. How could any employee dare to slander his boss face to face? Marcos tried to explain. "Actually, I took a closer look and found that this base is still a bit different from our base, at least it is not as comfortable as our base." "Marcos, the X-Men must be living in the building above. It doesn't seem to be used for living here." Clarice silently gave Marcus 10 strength. Marcus laughed awkwardly. "Really, maybe I made a mistake, hee. Lu Chuang patted Marcos on the shoulder and said with a smile, "Don't worry, I'm not a narrow-minded person, so I won't take this to heart." Marcus breathed a sigh of relief. I knew you were a good person. Lu Chuang smiled and said nothing. He has never been a narrow-minded person, but he has a relatively good memory, and anyone who has said bad things about him will remember it in his mind.